Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visitanipada. 497, Matanga Jataka. Whence comest thou? Etc. This story the master told while dwelling in Jetavana, about the hereditary king Udina. At that time, the Reverend Pandola Bharadvaja passing from Jetavana through the air, used generally to pass the heat of the day in King Udina's park at Kosambi. The elder, we are told, had in a former existence been king, and for a long time had enjoyed glory in that very park with his retinue. By virtue of the good then by him performed, he used to sit there in the heat of the day, enjoying the bliss of attainment, which was its fruit. One day he was in that place, and sitting under a sal tree in full flower, when Udina came into the park with a large number of followers. For 7 days he had been drinking deep, and he wished to take his pleasure in the park. He lay down on the royal seat in the arms of one of his women, and being fox soon fell asleep. Then the women who sat singing around threw down their instruments of music, and wandered about the pleasance gathering flowers and fruit. By and by they saw the elder, and came up, and saluting him sat down. The elder sat where he was and discoursed to them. The other woman by shifting her arms awoke the king, who said, "Where are those drabs gone?" She replied, "They are sitting in a ring round an ascetic." The king grew angry, and went to the elder, abusing and reviling. "Out on it, I'll have the fellow devoured by red ants." So in rage he caused a basket full of red ants to be broken over the elder's body. But the elder rose up in the air, and admonished the king. Then to Jetavana he went, and alighted at the gateway of the perfumed chamber. "Whence have you come?" asked the Tathagata, and he told him the fact. "Bharadvaja," quoth he, "this is not the first time Udina has done despite to a religious man, but he did the same before." Then at the elder's request he told a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king of Benares, the great being was born outside the city, as a Kandala's son, and they gave him the name of Mātaṅga the elephant. Afterwards he attained wisdom, and his fame was blown abroad as the wise Mātaṅga. Now at that time one Ditha Mangalika, daughter of a Benares merchant, every month or two used to come and disport her in the park with a crowd of companions. One day, the great being had gone to town on some business, and as he was entering the gate met Ditha Mangalika. He stepped aside, and stood quite still. From behind her curtain Ditha Mangalika spied him, and asked, "Who is that?" "A Kandala, my lady." "Bah," says she, "I have seen something that brings bad luck." And washing her eyes with scented water she turned back. The people with her cried out, "Ah, vile outcast, you have lost us free food and liquor today." In rage they pummeled Mātaṅga the Wise with hands and feet, and made him senseless, and went away. After a while he recovered consciousness, and thought, "The crowd around Ditha Mangalika beat me for no reason, an innocent man. I will not budge till I get her, not a moment before." With this resolve, he went and lay down at the door of her father's house. When they asked him why he lay there, his reply was, "All I want is Ditha Mangalika." One day passed, then a second, a third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. The resolve of the Buddhas is immovable. Therefore on the 7th day they brought out the girl, and gave her to him. Then she said, "Rise up, master, and let us go to your house." But he said, "Lady, I have been well pummeled by your people, I am weak, take me up on your back and carry me." So she did, and in full view of the citizens went forth from the city to the Kandala settlement. There for a few days the great being kept her, without transgressing in any way the rules of caste. Then he thought, "Only by renouncing the world, and in no other way, shall I be able to show this lady the highest honor, and give her the best gifts." So he said to her, "Lady, if I fetch nothing out of the forest, we cannot live. I will go into the forest, wait till I return, but do not worry." He laid injunctions upon the household not to neglect her, and went into the forest, and embraced the life of a religious ascetic with all diligence. So that in 7 days he developed the 8 attainments, and the 5 supernatural faculties. Then he thought, "Now I shall be able to protect Ditha Mangalika." By his supernatural power he went back, and alighted at the gate of the Kandala village, whence he proceeded to the door of Ditha Mangalika's house. She, when she heard of his return, came out, and began to weep, saying, "Why have you deserted me, master, and become an ascetic?" He said, Never mind, lady. Now I will make you more glorious than your former glory. Will you be able to say in the midst of the people just this? My husband is not Matanga, but the great Brahma? Yes, master, I can say it. Very well. When they ask you where is your husband, you must reply, he is gone to Brahma's heaven. If they ask, when he will come back, you must say, in 7 days he will come, breaking the moon's disk when she is at the full. With these words, he went away to Himalaya. Now Dithamangalika said what she had been told here and there in Benares, amidst a great crowd. The people believed, saying, Ah, he is great Brahma, and therefore does not visit Dithamangalika. But thus and thus it will be. On the night of full moon, at the time when the moon stands still in mid-course, the Bodhisattva assumed the appearance of Brahma, and amidst a blaze of light which filled all the kingdom of Kasi, and the city of Benares 12 leagues in extent, broke through the moon and came down. Thrice he made circuit above the city of Benares, and received the worship of the great crowd with perfumed garlands and such like, and then turned his face towards the Kandala village. The devotees of Brahma gathered together, and went to the Kandala village. They covered Dithamangalika's house with white cloths, swept the ground with 4 manner of sweet-smelling things, scattered flowers, burnt incense, spread an awning, prepared a splendid seat, lit a lamp of scented oil, laid at the door sand white and smooth as a silver plate, scattered flowers, put up banners. Before the house thus decorated the great being came down, and entered, and sat a little while on the seat. At that time Dithamangalika was in her monthly terms. His thumb touched her navel, and she conceived. Then the great being said to her, Lady, you are with child, and you shall bring forth a son. You and your son shall receive the highest honor and tribute. The water that washes your feet shall be used by kings for the ceremonial sprinkling throughout all India. The water you bathe in shall be an elixir of immortality. Those who sprinkle it on their heads shall be set free from all disease, and shall not know ill luck. They who lay the head on your feet, and salute you shall give 1,000 pieces of money. They who stand within your hearing and salute you shall give 100. They who stand in your sight, and salute you shall give 1 rupee each. Be vigilant. With this admonition in view of the crowd, he rose up and re-entered the moon. The devotees of Brahma collected, and stood there through the whole night. In the morning they caused her to enter a golden palanquin, and taking it upon their heads, bore her into the city. A great concourse came to her, crying aloud, The wife of great Brahma! And did worship with scented garlands and other such things. Those who were allowed to lay the head on her feet, and salute her gave a purse of 1,000 pieces. Those who might salute her within hearing gave 100. Those who might salute her standing within her sight gave 1 rupee each. Thus they included in their progress the whole city of Benares, 12 leagues in extent, and received a sum of 18 crores. Having thus made the circuit of that city, they brought her to the center of it, and there built a great pavilion, and set curtains about it, and caused her to dwell there amidst much glory and prosperity. Before the pavilion, they began to build 7 great entrance gates, and a palace with 7 stories. Much new merit was set to their account. In that same pavilion, Dithamangalika brought forth a son. On his name day, the Brahmins gathered together, and named him Mandavya Kumara, the prince of the pavilion, because he was born there. In 10 months the palace was finished. From that time she dwelt in it highly honored. And Prince Mandavya grew up amid great magnificence. When he was 7 or 8 years old, the best teachers in the length and breadth of India gathered together, and they taught him the 3 Vedas. From the age of 16 he provided food for the Brahmins, and 16,000 Brahmins were fed continually. At the 4th embattled gateway the alms were distributed to the Brahmins. Now on one great day of festival they prepared a quantity of rice porridge, and 16,000 Brahmins sat by the 4th embattled gateway, and partook of this food, accompanied with fresh ghee of a golden yellow, a decoction of honey and lump sugar. And the prince himself, brilliantly adorned with jewels, with golden slippers upon his feet, and a staff of fine gold in his hand, was walking about and giving directions. Ghee here, honey here. At that time, the wise Matanga, seated in his hermitage in the Himalayas, turned his thoughts to see what news there was of Dithamangalika's son. Perceiving that he was going in the wrong way, he thought, Today I will go, and convert the young man. and I will teach him how to give so that the gift shall bring much fruit. He went through the air to Lake Anotada, and there washed his mouth, and so forth. Standing in the district of Manasila, he donned the pair of colored garments, girt his girdle about him, put on the ragged robe, took his earthen bowl, and went through the air to the fourth gateway, where he alighted just by the alms hall, and stood on one side. Mandavya, looking this way and that, espied him. "Where do you come from?" cried he. "You ascetic, you misbegotten outcast, a goblin and no man." And he repeated the first stanza. "Whence comest thou in filthy garments drayest? A creature vile and goblin-like, I vow. A robe of refuse rags across thy breast. Unworthy of a gift, say, who art thou?" The great being listened, then with gentle heart addressed him in the words of the second stanza. "The food, O noble sir, is ready set. The people taste and eat and drink of it. You know we live on what we chance to get. Rise, let the low-caste churl enjoy a bit." Then Mandavya recited the third stanza. "For Brahmins, for my blessing by my hand, this food is got, the gift of faithful heart. Away! What boots it in my sight to stand? 'Tis not for such as thou, vile wretch, depart." Thereupon the great being repeated a stanza. "They sow the seed on high ground and on low, hoping for fruit, and on the marshy plain. In such a faith as this thy gifts bestow, worthy recipients so thou shalt obtain." Then Mandavya repeated a stanza. "I know the lands wherein I mean to sow, the proper places in this world for seed. Brahmins highborn, that holy scriptures know, these are good ground and fertile fields indeed." Then the great being repeated two stanzas. "The pride of birth, o'erweening self-conceit, drunkenness, hatred, ignorance, and greed. Those in whose hearts these vices find their seat, they all are bad and barren fields for seed. The pride of birth, o'erweening self-conceit, drunkenness, hatred, ignorance, and greed. Those in whose hearts these vices find no seat, they all are good and fertile fields for seed." These words the great being repeated again and again. But the other grew angry and cried, "The fellow prates overmuch. Where are my porters gone, that they do not cast out the churl?" Then he repeated a stanza. "Ho dhanda kuchni, upajnaya ho. And where is Upajodiya, I say? Punish the fellow, kill the fellow, go, and by the throat hale the vile churl away." The men, hearing his call, came up at a run, and saluting him asked, "What are we to do, my lord? Did you ever see this base outcast?" "No, sire, we did not know he had come in at all. Some juggler he is doubtless, or cunning rogue." "Well, why do you stand there? What are we to do, my lord?" "Why, strike the fellow's mouth, break his jaw, tear his back with rods and cudgels, punish him, take the wretch by the throat, knock him down, away with him out of this place." But the great being, ere they could come at him, rose up in the air, and there poised, repeated a stanza. "Revile a sage, to swallow blazing fire as much avails, or bite hard iron, or dig down a mountain with your nails." Having uttered these words, the great being rose high in the air, while the youth and the Brahmins gazed at the sight. Explaining this, the master recited a stanza. "So spake the sage Matanga, champion of truth and right. Then in the air he rose aloft before the Brahmin's sight. He turned his face to the eastwards, and coming down in a certain street, with intent that his footsteps might be visible, he begged alms near the eastern gate. Then, having collected a quantity of mixed victuals, he sat him down in a certain hall, and began to eat. But the deities of the city came up, finding it intolerable that this king should so speak as to annoy their sage. So the eldest goblin among them seized hold of Mandavya by the neck, and twisted it, and the others seized the other Brahmins and twisted their necks. But through pity for the Bodhisattva, they did not kill Mandavya. "He is his son," they said, and only tormented him. Mandavya's head was twisted so that it looked backwards over his shoulders. Hands and feet were stiff and stark. His eyes were turned up, as though he were a dead man. There he lay stark. The other Brahmins turned round and round, drabbling spittle at the mouth. People went and told Dithamangalika, "Something has happened to your son, my lady." She made all haste thither, and seeing him cried, "Oh, what is this?" and recited a stanza. Over the shoulder twisted stands his head. See how he stretches out a helpless arm. White are his eyes as though he were quite dead. Oh, who is it has wrought my son this harm? Then the bystanders repeated a stanza, telling her about it. A hermit came, in filthy garments drayest, a creature vile and goblin-like to see, with robe of refuse rags across his breast. The man who treated thus thy son is he. On hearing this she thought, no other has the power, the wise Mātaṅga without doubt it must be, but one who is steadfast, and full of goodwill to all creatures, will never go away and leave all these folk to torment. Now in what direction can he have gone? Which question she put in the following stanza. In what direction went the wise one hence? O noble youths, pray answer me this thing. Come let us make atonement for the offense, our son to life again that we may bring. The young men answered her in this manner. That wise one, up into the air rose he, like moon in mid-career the 15th day. The sage, truth consecrated, fair to see, towards the east moreover bent his way. This answer given, she said, I will seek my husband. And bidding take with her pitchers of gold and cups of gold, surrounded with a company of waiting women, she went and found the place where his footsteps had touched the ground. These she followed, until she came to him sitting upon a seat, and eating his meal. Approaching she saluted him, and stood still. On seeing her he placed some boiled rice in his bowl. Dithamangalica poured water for him from a golden pitcher. He at once washed his hands, and rinsed out his mouth. Then she said, Who has done this cruel thing to my son? Repeating this stanza. Over the shoulder twisted stands his head. See how he stretches out a helpless arm. White are his eyes, as though he were quite dead. Oh, who is it has wrought my son this harm? The stanzas which follow are said by the two alternately. Goblins there are, whose might and power is great, who follow sages beautiful to see. They saw thy son ill-minded, passionate, and they have treated thus thy son for thee. Then it is goblins who this thing have done. Do not be wroth, O holy man, with me. O brother, full of love towards my son, hither for refuge to thy feet I flee. Then let me tell thee that my mind doth hide, nor then nor now a thought of enmity. Thy son, through fancied knowledge drunk with pride, knows not the meaning of the Vedas 3. O brother, verily a man may find, all in a trice his sense quite gone blind. Forgive me my one error, O wise sage. They who are wise are never fierce in rage. The great being, thus pacified by her, replied, Well, I will give you the elixir of immortal life, to make the goblins depart. And he recited this stanza. This fragment of my leavings take with thee. Let the poor fool Mandavya eat a piece. Thy son shall be made whole, restored to thee, and so the goblins shall their prey release. When she heard the words of the great being, she held out a golden bowl, saying, Give me the elixir of immortality, my lord. The great being dropped in it some of his rice gruel, and said, First put the half of this into your son's mouth. The rest mix with water in a vessel, and put it in the mouths of the other Brahmins. They shall all be made whole. Then he arose and departed to Himalaya. She carried off the pitcher upon her head, crying, I have the elixir of immortality. Arrived at the house, she first put some of it in her son's mouth. The goblin fled away. The king got up and brushed off the dust, asking, What is this, mother? You know well enough what you have done. Now see the miserable plight of your doles men. When he looked at them, he was filled with remorse. Then his mother said, Mandavya, my dear son, you are a fool, and you do not know how to give so that the gift may bear fruit. Such as these are not fit for your bounty, but only such as are like the wise Mātaṅga. Henceforward give nothing to evil men like these, but give to the virtuous. Then she said, Thou art a fool, Mandavya, small of wit, not knowing when to do good deeds is fit. Thou givest to those whose sinfulness is great, to evildoers and intemperate. Garments of skin, a mass of shaggy hair, mouth like an ancient well with grass o'ergrown, and see what ragged clouts the creatures wear. But fools are saved not by such things alone. When passion, hate, and ignorance afar from men are driven, give to such calm and holy men, much fruit for this is given. Therefore from this time forward give not to wicked men like this. But whoso in this world has reached the 8 attainments, righteous ascetics and Brahmins who have gained the 5 transcendent faculties, Paksika Buddhas, to these give your gifts. Come, my son, let me give these our servants the elixir of immortality, and make them whole. So saying, she had the leavings of the rice gruel taken, and put in a pitcher of water, and sprinkled over the mouths of the 16,000 Brahmins. Each one got up, and brushed off the dust. Then these Brahmins, having been made to taste the leavings of a kandala, were put out of caste by the other Brahmins. In shame they departed from Benares and went to the kingdom of Meja, where they lived with the king of that country. But Mandavya remained where he was. At that time there was a Brahmin named Jatamanta, one of the religious, who lived hard by the city of Vedavati on the banks of the river of that name. And he was a man mightily proud of his birth. The great being went thither, resolved to humble the man's pride, and he made his abode near him, but further upstream. One day, having nibbled at a toothed stick, he let it fall into the river, resolving that it should get entangled in Jatamanta's knot of hair. Accordingly, as he was washing in the water, the stick became entangled in his hair. "Curse the brute," said he when he saw it. "Where has this come from with a pest? I will inquire." He proceeded upstream, and finding the great being, asked him, "What caste are you of?" "I am a Kandala." "Did you drop a toothed stick into the river?" "Yes, I did." "You brute! Curse you, vile outcast, a murrain on you. Don't stay here, but go further downstream." But even when he went to live downstream, the toothed sticks he dropped floated against the current and stuck in Jatamanta's hair. "Curse you," quoth he. "If you stay here, in 7 days your head shall burst into 7 pieces." The great being thought, "If I allow myself to be angry with the man, I shall not be keeping my virtue, but I will find a way to break down his pride." On the 7th day, he prevented the sunrise. All the world was put out. They came to the ascetic Jatamanta and asked, "Is it you, sir, who prevent the sun from rising?" He said, "That is no doing of mine. But there is a Kandala living by the riverside, and his doing it must be." Then the people came to the great being and asked him, "Is it you, sir, who keep the sun from rising?" "Yes, friends," said he. "Why?" they asked. "The ascetic who is your favorite reviles me, an innocent man. When he comes and falls at my feet to ask for mercy, then I will let the sun go." They went and dragged him along, and cast him down before the great being's feet, and tried to appease him, saying, "Sir, pray let the sun go." But he said, "I cannot let him go. If I do so, this man's head will burst into 7 pieces." They said, "Then, sir, what are we to do? Bring me a lump of clay." They brought it. "Now place it upon the head of this ascetic, and let the ascetic down into the water." After making these arrangements, he let the sun rise. No sooner was the sun set free, the lump of clay split in 7, and the ascetic plunged under the water. Having thus humbled him, the great being pondered, "Where now are those 16,000 Brahmins?" He perceived they were with the king of Meja, and resolved to humble them. By his supernatural power he alighted in the neighborhood of the city, and bowl in hand tramped the city seeking alms. When the Brahmins descried him, they said, "Let him stay here but a couple of days, and he will leave us without a refuge." In all haste they went to the king, crying, "O mighty king, here is a juggler and mountebank come. Take him prisoner." The king was ready enough. The great being, with his mess of mixed victuals, was sitting beside a wall, on a bench, and eating. There, as he was busy partaking of the food, the king's messengers found him, and striking him with a sword killed him. After his death, he was born in the Brahma world. It is said that in this birth the Bodhisattva was a mongoose tamer, and in this servile occupation was put to death. The deities were angry, and poured down upon the whole kingdom of Meja a torrent of hot ashes, and wiped it out from among kingdoms. Therefore it is said, "So the whole nation was destroyed of Meja," as they say. For glorious Matanga's death, the kingdom swept away. When the master had ended this discourse, he said, "It is not now the first time that Udina has abused religious men, but he did the same before." Then he identified the birth. At that time, Udina was Mandavya, and I myself was the wise Matanga.
Stories of the Buddha's Former Births, Book 15 Visit to Nipata, for 98. Citta Sambhuta Jataka, Every Good Deed, etc. This story the master told while dwelling in Jetavana, about 2 fellow priests of the Reverend Maha who lived happily together. This pair, we are told, were most friendly, and had share for share in all things with the utmost fairness. Even when they walked for alms, together they went out and together came in, nor could they endure to be apart. In the hall of truth sat the brethren, praising their friendship, when the master came in, and asked what they talked of as they sat there. They told him, and he replied, "Their friendship in one existence, brethren, is nothing to wonder at. For wise men of old kept friendliness unbroken throughout 3 or 4 different existences." So saying, he told them a story of the past. Once upon a time, in the realm of Avanti, and the city of Eugenie, reigned a great king named King Avanti. At that time, a Kandala village lay outside Eugenie, and there the great being was born. Another person was born, the son of his mother's sister. The one of these two was named Citta, and the other Sambhuta. These two, when they grew up, having learnt what is called the art of sweeping in the Kandala breed, thought one day they would go and show off this art at the city gate. So one of them showed off at the north gate, and one at the east. Now in this city were 2 women wise in the omens of sight, the one a merchant's daughter and the other a chaplain's. These went forth to make merry in the park, having ordered food to be brought hard and soft, garlands and perfumes. And it so happened that one went out by the northern gate and one the eastern. Seeing the 2 young Kandalas showing their art, the girls asked, "Who are these?" Kandalas, they were informed. "This is an evil omen to see," they said, and after washing their eyes with perfumed water, they returned back. Then the multitude cried, "O vile outcasts! You have made us lose food and strong drink which would have cost us nothing." They belabored the 2 kinsmen, and did them much misery and mischief. When they recovered their senses, up they got and joined company, and told each the other what woe had befallen him, weeping and wailing, and wondering what to do now. "All this misery has come upon us," they thought, "because of our birth. We shall never be able to play the part of Kandalas. Let us conceal our birth, and go to Takasila in the disguise of young Brahmins, and study there." Having made this decision, they went thither, and followed their studies in the law under a far-famed master. A rumor was blown abroad over India that 2 young Kandalas were students, and had concealed their birth. The wise Citta was successful in his studies, but Sambhuta not so. One day a villager invited the teacher, intending to offer food to the Brahmins. Now it happened that rain fell in the night, and flooded all the hollows in the road. Early in the morning the teacher summoned wise Citta and said, "My lad, I cannot go. Do you go with the young men, and pronounce a blessing, eat what you get for yourself and bring home what there is for me." Accordingly he took the young Brahmins and went. While the young men bathed and rinsed their mouths, the people prepared rice porridge, which they set ready for them, saying, "Let it cool." Before it was cool, the young men came and sat down. The people gave them the water of offering, and set the bowls in front of them. Sambhuta's wits were somewhat muddled, and imagining it to be cool, took up a ball of the rice and put it in his mouth, but it burnt him like a red-hot ball of metal. In his pain he forgot his part altogether, and glancing at wise Citta he said, in the Kandala dialect, "Hot, ain't it?" The other forgot himself too, and answered in their manner of speech, "Spit it out, spit it out." At this the young men looked at each other, and said, "What kind of language is this?" Wise Citta pronounced a blessing. When the young men came home, they gathered in little knots and sat here and there discussing the words used. Finding that it was the dialect of the Kandalas, they cried out on them, "O vile outcasts! You have been tricking us all this while, and pretending to be Brahmins." And they beat them both. One good man drove them out, saying, "Away! The blot's in the blood. Be off. Go somewhere and become ascetics." The young Brahmins told their teacher that these 2 were Kandalas. The pair went out into the woods, and there took up the ascetic life, and after no long time died, and were born again as the young of a doe on the banks of the Naranjara. From the time of their birth they always went about together. One day, when they had fed, a hunter espied them under a tree ruminating and cuddling together, very happy, head to head, nozzle to nozzle, horn to horn. He cast a javelin at them, and killed them both by one blow. After this they were born as the young of an osprey, on the bank of Nirmada. There too, when they grew up, after feeding they would cuddle together, head to head and beak to beak. A bird snarer saw them, caught them together, and killed them both. Next the wise Citta was born at Kosambi, as a chaplain's son. The wise Sambhuta was born as the son of the king of Uttarapankala. From their name days they could remember their former births. But Sambhuta was not able to remember all without breaks, and all he could remember was the fourth or Kandala birth. Citta, however, remembered all four in due order. When Citta was 16 years old, he went away and became an ascetic in Himalaya, and developed the faculty of the religious ecstasy, and dwelt in the bliss of ecstatic trance. Wise Sambhuta, after his father's death, had the umbrella spread over him, and on the very day of the umbrella ceremony, in the midst of a great concourse, made a ceremonial hymn and uttered 2 stanzas in aspiration. When they heard this, the royal wives and the musicians all chanted then, saying, "Our king's own coronation hymn," and in course of time all the citizens sang it, as the hymn which their king loved. Wise Citta, in his dwelling place in Himalaya, wondered whether his brother Sambhuta had assumed the umbrella or not. Perceiving that he had, he thought, "I shall never be able to instruct a young ruler, but when he is old, I will visit him and persuade him to be an ascetic." For 50 years he went not, and by that time the king was increased with sons and daughters. Then by his supernatural power, he went and alighted in the park and sat down on the seat of ceremony like an image of gold. Just then a lad was picking up sticks, and as he did so he sang that hymn. Wise Citta called him to approach. He came up with an obeisance and waited. Citta said to him, "Since early morning you have been singing that hymn. Do you know no other?" "Oh yes, sir, I know many more, but these are the verses the king loves. That is why I sing no others." "Is there anyone who can sing a refrain to the king's hymn?" "No, sir." "Could you?" "Yes, if I am taught one." "Well, when the king chants these 2 verses, you sing this by way of a third." And he recited a hymn. "Now," said he, "go and sing this before the king, and the king will be pleased with you and make much of you for it." The lad went to his mother quickly, and got himself dressed up spick and span. Then to the king's door, and sent in word that a lad would sing him a refrain to his hymn. The king said, "Let him approach." When the lad had come in, and saluted him, quoth the king, "They say you will sing me an answering refrain to my hymn?" "Yes, my lord," said he. "Bring in the whole court to hear." As soon as the court had assembled, the lad said, "Sing your hymn, my lord, and I will answer with mine." The king repeated a pair of stanzas. "Every good deed bears fruit, or soon or late, no deed without result, and nothing vain. I see Sambhuta mighty grown and great, thus do his virtues bear him fruit again. Every good deed bears fruit, or soon or late, no deed without result, and nothing vain. Who knows if Citta also may be great, and like myself, his heart have brought him gain." At the end of this hymn, the lad chanted the 3rd stanza. "Every good deed bears fruit, or soon or late, no deed without result, and nothing vain. Behold, my lord, see Citta at thy gate, and like thyself, his heart has brought him gain." On hearing this, the king repeated the 4th stanza. "Then art thou Citta, or the tale didst hear from him, or did some other make thee know? Thy hymn is very sweet. I have no fear, a village and a bounty I bestow." Then the lad repeated the 5th stanza. "I am not Citta, but I heard the thing. It was a sage laid on me this command. Go and recite an answer to the king, and be rewarded by his grateful hand." Hearing this, the king thought, "It must be my brother Citta. Now I'll go and see him." Then he laid his bidding upon his men in the words of these 2 stanzas. "Come, yoke the royal chariots, so finely wrought and made. Gird up with girths the elephants, in necklets bright arrayed. Beat drums for joy, and let the conchs be blown. Prepare the swiftest chariots I own. For to that hermitage I will away, to see the sage that sits within this day." So he spoke. Then mounting his fine chariot, he went swiftly to the park gate. There he checked his chariot, and approached wise Citta with an obeisance, and sat down on one side. Greatly pleased, he recited the 8th stanza. "A precious hymn it was I sang so sweet. while thronging multitudes around me pressed. For now this holy sage I come to greet, and all is joy and gladness in my breast. Happy from the instant he saw wise Citta, he gave all necessary directions, bidding prepare a seat for his brother, and repeated the 9th stanza. Accept a seat, and for your feet fresh water. It is right to offer gifts of food to guests. Accept, as we invite. After this sweet invitation, the king repeated another stanza, offering him the half of his kingdom. Let them make glad the place where thou shalt dwell. Let throngs of waiting women wait on thee. Oh, let me show thee that I love thee well, and let us both kings here together be. When he had heard these words, wise Citta discoursed to him in 6 stanzas. Seeing the fruit of evil deeds, O king, seeing what profit deeds of goodness bring, I fain would exercise stern self-control. Sons, wealth, and cattle cannot charm my soul. 10 decades has this mortal life, which each to each succeed. This limit reached, man withers fast like to a broken reed. Then what is pleasure, what is love, wealth hunting what to me? What sons and daughters? No, O king, from fetters I am free. For this is true, I know it well. Death will not pass me by. And what is love or what is wealth, when you must come to die? The lowest race that go upon 2 feet are the Candilass, meanest men on earth. When all our deeds were ripe, as guerdon meet, we both as young Candilass had our birth. Candilass in Avanti land, deer by Naranjara, Ospreys by the Nerbudda, now Brahmin and Katiya. Having thus made clear his mean births in time past, here also in this birth he declared the impermanency of things created, and recited 4 stanzas to arouse an effort. Life is but short, and death the end must be. The aged have no hiding where to flee. Then, O Pancala, what I bid thee do, all deeds which grow to misery, eschew. Life is but short, and death the end must be. The aged have no hiding where to flee. Then, O Pancala, what I bid thee do, all deeds whose fruit is misery, eschew. Life is but short, and death the end must be. The aged have no hiding where to flee. Then, O Pancala, what I bid thee do, all deeds that are with passion stained, eschew. Life is but short, and death the end must be. Old age will sap our strength, we cannot flee. Then, O Pancala, what I bid thee do, all deeds that lead to lowest hell, eschew. The king rejoiced as the great being spoke and repeated 3 stanzas. True is that word, O brother, which you say. You like a holy saint your words dictate. But my desires are hard to cast away. By such as I am, they are very great. As elephants deep sunken in the mire, cannot climb out although they see the land, so, sunken in the slough of strong desire, upon the brethren's path I cannot stand. As father or as mother would their son admonish good and happy how to grow, admonish me how happiness is won, and tell me by which way I ought to go. Then the great being said to him, O Lord of men, thou canst not cast away these passions which are common to mankind. Let not thy people unjust taxes pay. Equal and righteous ruling let them find. Send messengers to north, south, east, and west, the Brahmins and ascetics to invite. Provide them food and drink, a place to rest, clothes and all else that may be requisite. Give thou the food and drink which satisfies. Sages and holy Brahmins, full of faith, who gives and rules as well as in him lies, will go to heaven all blameless after death. But if, surrounded by thy womankind, thou feel thy passion and desire too strong, this verse of poetry then bear in mind, and sing it in the midst of all the throng. No roof to shelter from the sky, amid the dogs he lay. His mother nursed him as she walked, but he's a king today. Such was the great being's advice. Then he said, I have given you my counsel, and now do you become an ascetic or not, as you think fit, but I will follow up the result of my own deeds. Then he rose up in the air, and shook off the dust of his feet over him, and departed to Himalaya. And the king saw it and was greatly moved, and relinquishing his kingdom to his eldest son, He called out his army, and set his face in the direction of Himalaya. When the great being heard of his coming, he went with his attendant sages and received him, and ordained him to the holy life, and taught him the means of inducing mystic ecstasy. He developed the faculty of mystical meditation. Thus these two together became destined for Brahma's world. When the master had ended his discourse, he said, "Thus, brethren, wise men of old continued firm friends through the course of 3 or 4 existences." Then he identified the birth. At that time Ananda was the wise Sambhuta, and I myself was the wise Citta. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nibbida. For 99. Sivi Jataka. If there be any human, etc. This story the master told while dwelling at Jetavana, about the gift incomparable. The circumstances have been fully told in Book 8, under the Savira birth. But here the king, on the 7th day, gave all the requisites and asked for thanks. But the master went away without thanking him. After breakfast the king went to the monastery and said, "Why did you return no thanks, sir?" The master said, "The people were unpurified, your majesty." He went on to declare the law, reciting the stanza that begins, "To heaven the avaricious shall not go." The king, pleased at heart, did reverence to the Tathagata by presenting an outer robe of the Sivi country, worth 1,000 pieces of money. Then he returned to the city. Next day they were talking of it in the Hall of Truth. "Sirs, the king of Kosala gave the gift incomparable, and, not content with that, when the Disabala had discoursed to him, the king gave him a Sivi garment worth 1,000 pieces. How insatiate the king is in giving!" Sure enough, the master came in and asked what they talked of as they sat there. They told him. He said, "Brothers, things external are acceptable, true. But wise men of old, who gave gifts till all India rang again with the fame of it, each day distributing as much as 600,000 pieces, were unsatisfied with external gifts. And remembering the proverb, 'Give what you prize and love will arise,' they even pulled out their eyes and gave to those that asked." With these words he told a story of the past. Once upon a time, when the mighty King Sivi reigned in the city of Aritapura in the kingdom of Sivi, the great being was born as his son. They called his name Prince Sivi. When he grew up, he went to Takasila and studied there. Then returning, he proved his knowledge to his father the king, and by him was made viceroy. At his father's death he became king himself, and, forsaking the ways of evil, he kept the 10 royal virtues and ruled in righteousness. He caused 6 alms halls to be builded, at the 4 gates, in the midst of the city, and at his own door. He was munificent in distributing each day 600,000 pieces of money. On the 8th, 14th, and 15th days, he never missed visiting the alms halls to see the distribution made. Once on the day of the full moon, the state umbrella had been uplifted early in the morning, and he sat on the royal throne thinking over the gifts he had given. Thought he to himself, "Of all outside things there is nothing I have not given, but this kind of giving does not content me. I want to give something which is a part of myself. Well, this day when I go to the alms hall, I vow that if anyone ask not something outside me, but name what is part of myself, if he should mention my very heart, I will cut open my breast with a spear, and as though I were drawing up a water lily, stalk and all, from a calm lake, I will pull forth my heart dripping with blood clots and give it him. If he should name the flesh of my body, I will cut the flesh off my body and give it, as though I were graving with a graving tool. Let him name my blood, I will give him my blood, dropping it in his mouth or filling a bowl with it. Or again, if one say, 'I can't get my household work done, come and do me a slave's part at home,' then I will leave my royal dress and stand without, proclaiming myself a slave, and slave's work I will do. Should any men demand my eyes, I will tear out my eyes and give them, as one might take out the pith of a palm tree." Thus he thought within him, "If there be any human gift that I have never made, be it my eyes, I'll give it now, all firm and unafraid." Then he bathed himself with 16 pitchers of perfumed water, and adorned him in all his magnificence. And after a meal of choice food he mounted upon an elephant richly caparisoned and went to the alms hall. Sakka, perceiving his resolution, thought, King Sivi has determined to give his eyes to any chance comer who may ask, "Will you be able to do it, or no?" He determined to try him, and in the form of a Brahmin old and blind, he posted himself on a high place, and when the king came to his alms hall he stretched out his hand and stood crying, "Long live the king!" Then the king drove his elephant towards him, and said, "What do you say, Brahmin?" Saka said to him, "O great king! In all the inhabited world there is no spot where the fame of your munificent heart has not sounded. I am blind, and you have 2 eyes. Then he repeated the first stanza, asking for an eye. To ask an eye the old man comes from far, for I have none. Oh, give me one of yours, I pray, then we shall each have one. When the great being heard this, thought he, "Why, that is just what I was thinking in my palace before I came. What a fine chance! My heart's desire will be fulfilled today. I shall give a gift which no man ever gave yet." And he recited the second stanza. Who taught thee hitherward to wend thy way, O mendicant, and for an eye to pray? The chiefest portion of a man is this, and hard for men to part with, so they say. The succeeding stanzas are to be read 2 and 2, as may easily be seen. Sujampati among the gods, the same. Here among men called Magava by name. He taught me hitherward to wend my way, begging and for an eye to urge my claim. 'Tis the all-chiefest gift for which I pray. Give me an eye. Oh, do not say me nay. Give me an eye, that chiefest gift of gifts, so hard for men to part with, as they say. The wish that brought thee hitherward, the wish that did arise within thee, be that wish fulfilled. Here, Brahmin, take my eyes. One eye thou didst request of me. Behold, I give thee 2. Go with good sight, in all the people's view. So be thy wish fulfilled and now come true. So much the king said. But, thinking it not meet that he should root out his eyes and bestow them there and then, he brought the Brahmin indoors with him, and sitting on the royal throne, sent for a surgeon named Savaka. "Take out my eye," he then said. Now all the city rang with the news that the king wished to tear out his eyes and give them to a Brahmin. Then the commander-in-chief and all the other officials, and those beloved of the king, gathered together from city and harem, and recited 3 stanzas, that they might turn the king from his purpose. "O do not give thine eye, my lord. Desert us not, O king. Give money, pearls and coral give, and many a precious thing. Give thoroughbreds caparisoned. Forth be the chariots rolled. O king, drive up the elephants all fine with cloth of gold. These give, O king, that we may all preserve thee safe and sound, thy faithful people, with our cars and chariots ranged around." Hereupon the king recited 3 stanzas. The soul which, having sworn to give, is then unfaithful found, puts his own neck within a snare low hidden on the ground. The soul which, having sworn to give, is then unfaithful found, more sinful is than sin, and he to Yama's house is bound. Unasked give nothing, neither give the thing he asketh not. This therefore which the Brahmin asks, I give it on the spot. Then the courtiers asked, "What do you desire in giving your eyes?" Repeating a stanza. "Life, beauty, joy, or strength? What is the prize? O king, which motive for your deed supplies? Why should the king of Sivi land supreme, for the next world's sake thus give up his eyes?" The king answered them in a stanza. "In giving thus, not glory is my goal, not sons, not wealth or kingdoms to control. This is the good old way of holy men. Of giving gifts enamored is my soul." To the great being's words the courtiers answered nothing. So the great being addressed Savaka the surgeon in a stanza. "A friend and comrade, Savaka, art thou? Do as I bid thee. Thou hast skill enow. Take out my eyes, for this is my desire, and in the beggar's hands bestow them now." But Savaka said, "Bethink you, my lord, to give one's eyes is no light thing. Savaka, I have considered. Don't delay, nor talk too much in my presence." Then he thought, "It is not fitting that a skillful surgeon like me should pierce a king's eyes with the lancet." So he pounded a number of simples, rubbed a blue lotus with the powder, and brushed it over the right eye. Round rolled the eye, and there was great pain. "Reflect, my king. I can make it all right. Go on, friend, no delay, please. Again he rubbed in the powder and brushed it over the eye. The eye started from the socket. The pain was worse than before. Reflect, my king. I can still restore it. Be quick with the job. A third time he smeared a sharper powder and applied it. By the drug's power round went the eye, out it came from the socket, and hung dangling at the end of the tendon. Reflect, my king. I can yet restore it again. Be quick. The pain was extreme. Blood was trickling. The king's garments were stained with the blood. The king's women and the courtiers fell at his feet, crying, "My lord, do not sacrifice your eyes." Loudly they wept and wailed. The king endured the pain and said, "My friend, be quick." "Very well, my lord," said the physician, and with his left hand grasping the eyeball took a knife in his right, and severing the tendon, laid the eye in the great being's hand. He, gazing with his left eye at the right and enduring the pain, said, "Brahmin, come here." When the Brahmin came near, he went on, "The eye of omniscience is dearer than this eye 100-fold, I 1,000-fold. There you have my reason for this action." And he gave it to the Brahmin, who raised it and placed it in his own eye socket. There it remained fixed by his power like a blue lotus in bloom. When the great being with his left eye saw that eye in his head, he cried, "Ah, how good is this my gift of an eye!" And thrilled straightway with the joy that had arisen within him, he gave the other eye also. Saka placed this also in the place of his own eye, and departed from the king's palace, and then from the city, with the gaze of the multitude upon him, and went away to the world of gods. The master, explaining this, repeated a stanza and a half. So Sivi spurred on Savaka, and he fulfilled his mind. He drew the king's eyes out, and to the Brahmin these consigned. And now the Brahmin had the eyes, and now the king was blind. In a short while the king's eyes began to grow. As they grew, and before they reached the top of the holes, a lump of flesh rose up inside like a ball of wool, filling the cavity. They were like a doll's eyes, but the pain ceased. The great being remained in the palace a few days. Then he thought, "What has a blind man to do with ruling? I will hand over my kingdom to the courtiers, and go into my park, and become an ascetic and live as a holy man." He summoned his courtiers, and told them what he intended to do. "One man," said he, "shall be with me to wash my face and so forth, and to do all that is proper, and you must fasten a cord to guide me to the retiring places." Then calling for his charioteer, he bade him prepare the chariot. But the courtiers would not allow him to go in the chariot. They brought him out in a golden litter, and set him down by the lakeside, and then, guarding him all around, returned. The king sat in the litter thinking of his gift. At that moment Saka's throne became hot, and he pondering perceived the reason. "I will offer the king a boon," thought he, "and make his eye well again." So to that place he came, and not far off from the great being he walked up and down, up and down. To explain this the master recited these stanzas. A few days passed. The eyes began to heal and sound to appear. The fostering king of Sivi then sent for his charioteer. "Prepare the chariot, charioteer. To me then make it known. I go to park and wood and lake with lilies overgrown." He sat him in a litter by the waterside, and here, Sujempati, the king of gods, great Saka, did appear. "Who is that?" cried the great being, when he heard the sound of the footsteps. Saka repeated a stanza. "Saka, the king of gods, am I. To visit thee I came. Choose thou a boon, O royal sage. Whate'er thy wish may name." The king replied with another stanza. "Wealth, strength, and treasure without end. These I have left behind. O Saka, death and nothing more I want, for I am blind." Then Saka said, "Do you ask death, King Sivi, because you wish to die, or because you are blind?" "Because I am blind, my lord. The gift is not everything in itself, your majesty. It is given with an eye to the future. Yet there is a motive relating to this visible world. Now you were asked for one eye and gave two. Make an act of truth about it." Then he began a stanza. "O warrior, lord of biped kind, declare the thing that's true. If you the truth declare, your eye shall be restored to you. On hearing this, the great being replied, if you wish to give me an eye, Saka, do not try any other means, but let my eye be restored as a consequence of my gift. Saka said, though they call me Saka, king of the gods, your majesty, yet I cannot give an eye to anyone else, but by the fruit of the gift by thee given, and by nothing else your eye shall be restored to you. Then the other repeated a stanza, maintaining that his gift was well given. Whatever sort, whatever kind of suitor shall draw near, whoever comes to ask of me, he to my heart is dear. If these my solemn words be true, now let my eye appear. Even as he uttered the words, one of his eyes grew up in the socket. Then he repeated a couple of stanzas to restore the other. A Brahmin came to visit me, one of my eyes to crave. Unto that Brahmin mendicant the pair of them I gave. A greater joy and more delight that action did afford. If these my solemn words be true, be the other eye restored. On the instant appeared his second eye. But these eyes of his were neither natural nor divine. An eye given by Saka as the Brahmin cannot be natural, we know. On the other hand, a divine eye cannot be produced in anything that is injured. But these eyes are called the eyes of truth, absolute and perfect. At the time when they came into existence, the whole royal retinue by Saka's power was assembled, and Saka, standing in the midst of the throng, uttered praise in a couple of stanzas. O fostering king of Sivi land, these holy hymns of thine have gained for thee as bounty free this pair of eyes divine. Through rock and wall, o'er hill and dale, whatever bar may be, 100 leagues on every side those eyes of thine shall see. Having uttered these stanzas, poised in the air before the multitude, with a last counsel to the great being that he should be vigilant, Saka returned to the world of gods. And the great being, surrounded by his retinue, went back in great pomp to the city, and entered the palace called Kandaka, the peacock's eye. The news that he had got his eyes again spread abroad all through the kingdom of Sivi. All the people gathered together to see him with gifts in their hands. Now all this multitude is come together, thought the great being. I shall praise my gift that I gave. He caused a great pavilion to be put up at the palace gate, where he seated himself upon the royal throne, with the white umbrella spread above him. Then the drum was sent beating about the city, to collect all the trade guilds. Then he said, O people of Sivi, now you have beheld these divine eyes, never eat food without giving something away. And he repeated 4 stanzas, declaring the law, who, if he's asked to give, would answer no, although it be his best and choicest prize? People of Sivi thronged in concourse, ho, come hither, see the gift of God, my eyes. Through rock and wall, o'er hill and dale, whatever bar may be, 100 leagues on every side these eyes of mine can see. Self-sacrifice in all men mortal living, of all things is most fine. I sacrificed a mortal eye, and giving, received an eye divine. See, people, see, give ere ye eat, let others have a share. This done with your best will and care, blameless to heaven you shall repair. In these 4 verses he declared the law, and after that, every fortnight, on the holy day, even every 15th day, he declared the law in these same verses without cessation to a great gathering of people. Hearing which, the people gave alms and did good deeds, and went to swell the hosts of heaven. When the master had ended this discourse, he said, Thus, brethren, wise men of old gave to any chance comer, who was not content with outside gifts, even their own eyes, taken out of their head. Then he identified the birth. At that time Ananda was Savaka the physician, Anuruddha was Saka, the Buddha's followers were the people, and I myself was King Sivi. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Vipassanā. 500. Sirimanda Jataka. Of wisdom full, etc. This problem of Sirimanda will be given at large in the Maha. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 501. Rohanta Miga Jataka. In fear of death, etc. This story the master told while dwelling in the bamboo grove, about the Reverend Ananda who made renunciation of his life. This renunciation will be described in Book 21. Under the Kula Hamsa birth, the subduing of Dhanapala. When this reverend man had renounced his life for the master's sake, they gossiped about it in the Hall of Truth. Sirs, the Reverend Ananda, having attained to the detailed knowledge of the course of religious training, renounced his life for the Disabala. The master came in, asking what they spoke of as they sat there. They told him, said he, "Brothers, this is not the first time he has laid down his life for my sake. He has done it before." Then he told them a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king in Benares, his chief consort's name was Kema. At that time the Bodhisattva was born in the Himalaya region as a stag. Golden-hued he was and beautiful, and his younger brother, named Miga or dappled deer, was also of the color of gold, and so also his younger sister Sutana. Now the great being's name was Rohanta, and he was king of the deer. Traversing 2 ranges of the mountains, in the third he lived beside a lake called Lake Rohanta, and surrounded by a herd of 80,000 deer. He used to support his parents, who were old and blind. Now a hunter, who lived in a village of hunters near Benares, came to the Himalayas, and saw the great being. He returned to his village, and on his deathbed told his son, "My boy, in such a part of our hunting ground there is a golden deer. If the king should ask, you may tell him of it." One day Queen Kema, in the dawning, saw a dream, and this was the manner of that dream. A gold-colored stag sat on a golden seat, and he discoursed to the queen on the law with a honey-sweet voice, like the sound of a golden bell tinkling. She listened with great delight to this discoursing, but before the discourse was ended the deer rose and went away, and she awoke, crying out, "Catch me the stag!" The attendants, hearing her cry, burst out a-laughing. Here's the house shut close, door and window. Not even a breath of air can get in, and at such a time my lady calls out to catch her the stag. By this time she understood that it was a dream, but she said to herself, "If I say, it is a dream, the king will make no account of it. But if I say, it is my woman's craving, he will attend to it with all care. I will hear the discourse of the golden stag." Then she lay down as though sick. The king came in. "What is wrong with my queen?" said he. "Oh, my lord, only my natural craving." "What do you wish?" "I wish to hear the discourse of a righteous golden stag." "Why, my lady, what you crave does not exist. There is no such thing as a golden stag." She said, "If I don't get it, die I must on the spot." She turned her back on the king, and lay still. "If there is one, it shall be caught," said the king. Then he questioned his courtiers and Brahmins, just as in the peacock birth, whether there were such things as golden deer. Finding that there were, he summoned the huntsman, and asked, "Which of you has seen or heard of such a creature?" The son of the hunter we spoke of told the story as he heard it. "My man," said the king, "when you bring me this deer I will reward you richly. Go and bring it here." He gave the money for his expenses, and dismissed him. The man said, "Never fear. If I cannot bring the stag I will bring his skin. If I can't get that I will bring his hair." Then the man returned home, and gave the king's money to his family. Then he went out and saw the royal stag. "Where shall I lay my snare?" he mused, "so as to catch him?" He saw his chance at the drinking place. He twisted a stout cord of leather thongs, and set it with a pole at the place where the great being went down to drink water. Next day, the great being with the 80,000 deer during his search for food came thither to drink water at the usual ford. Just as he was going down, he was caught in the noose. Then he thought, "If I cry out the cry of capture, all my troop will flee in terror without drinking." Although he was fast at the end of the pole, he stood pretending to drink, as if he were free. When the 80,000 deer had drunk, and now stood clear of the water, he thrice jerked at the noose, to break it if possible. The first time he cut his skin, the second time cut into his flesh, and the third time he strained a tendon so that the snare touched the bone. Then, unable to break it, he uttered the cry of capture. All the herd of deer fled terrified in 3 troops. Citta Miga could not see the great being in any of the three troops. This danger, thought he, which has come upon us, has fallen on my brother. Then returning, he saw him there fast caught. The great being caught sight of him, and cried, "Don't stand there, brother. There is danger here." Then, urging him to flee, he repeated the first stanza. "In fear of death, O Jataka, those herds of creatures flee. Go thou with them, and linger not, for they shall live with thee." The three stanzas which follow are said by the two alternately. "No, no, Rohanta, I'll not go. My heart has drawn me near. I'm ready to lay down my life. I will not leave thee here." Then blind, with none to care for them, our parents both must die. Oh, go, and let them live with thee. Oh, do not linger nigh. No, no, Rohanta, I'll not go. My heart has drawn me near. I'm ready to lay down my life. I will not leave thee here. He took his stand, supporting the Bodhisattva on the right side, and cheering him. Sutana also, the young doe, ran about among the deer, but could not find her brothers anywhere. This danger, she thought, must have fallen upon my brothers. She turned back and came to them. And the great being, as he saw her come, repeated the fifth stanza. "Go, timid doe, and run away. An iron snare holds me. Go with the rest, and linger not, and they shall live with thee." The three next stanzas are said alternately as before. "No, no, Rohanta, I'll not go. My heart has drawn me near. I'm ready to lay down my life. I will not leave thee here." Then blind, with none to care for them, our parents both must die. Oh, go, and let them live with thee. Oh, do not linger nigh. No, no, Rohanta, I'll not go. My heart has drawn me near. I'll lose my life, but never leave thee snared and captured here. Thus she also refused to obey, and stood by his left side consoling him. Now the huntsman saw the deer scampering off, and heard the cry of capture. "It must be the king of the herd is caught," he said, and, tightening his girdle, he grasped the spear to give him the death, and ran quickly up. The great being repeated the ninth stanza as he saw him coming. "The furious hunter, arms in hand, see him approaching near, and he will slay us here today with arrow or with spear." Citta did not flee, though he saw the man. But Sutana, not being strong enough to stand still, ran a little way for fear of death. Then with the thought, "Where shall I flee if I desert my two brothers?" she returned again, renouncing her own life, with death on her brow, and stood by the left side of her brother. To explain this, the master recited the 10th stanza. "The tender doe in panic fear a little way did fly, then did a thing most hard to do, for she returned to die. When the hunter came up, he saw these three creatures standing together. A pitiful thought arose in his heart, as he guessed they were brothers and sister born of one womb. Only the king of the herd, thought he, is caught in the snare. The other two are bound with the ties of honor. What kin can they be to him?" Which question he asked thus, "What are these deer that wait upon the prisoner, though free, nor for the sake of very life will leave him here, and flee?" Then the Bodhisattva answered, "My brother and my sister these, of one same mother born, nor for the sake of very life will leave me here forlorn." These words made his heart more exceedingly soft. Citta, that royal stag, perceiving that his heart grew soft, said, "Friend hunter, do not imagine that this creature is a deer and no more. He is king of 80,000 deer, one of virtuous life, tender-hearted to all creatures of great wisdom. He supports his sire and dam, now blind and old. If you slay a righteous being like this, in slaying him you slay dam and sire, my sister and me, all five. But if you grant my brother his life, you bestow life on the five of us." Then he repeated a stanza. "Grown blind, with none to care for them, they both will perish so. Oh, grant thou life to all the five, and let my brother go." When the hunter heard this pious discourse, he was glad at heart. "Fear not, my lord," said he, and repeated the next stanza. "So be it. See, I now set free the parent fostering deer. His parents, when they find him safe, shall make a merry cheer. As he said this, he thought, "What do I want with the king and his honors? If I hurt this royal deer, either the earth will gape and swallow me up, or a thunderbolt will fall and strike me. I will let him go." So approaching the great being, he pulled down the pole and cut the leather thong. Then he embraced the deer and laid him close to the water, tenderly and gently loosed him out of the noose, joined the ends of the tendon, and the lips of the flesh wound, and the edges of the skin, washed off the blood with water, pitifully chafed him again and again. By the power of his love and the great being's perfection all grew whole again, sinews, flesh, and skin. Hide and hair covered the foot. No one could have guessed where he had been wounded. The great being stood there, full of happiness. Citta looked on him and rejoiced, and rendered thanks to the hunter in this stanza. "Hunter, be happy now, and may thy kindred happy be, as I am happy to behold the mighty stag set free." Now the great being thought, "Is it of his own doing this hunter snared me, or at the bidding of another?" And he asked the cause of his capture. The huntsman said, "My lord, I have nothing to do with you, but the king's consort, Kima, desires to hear you discourse of righteousness. Therefore I snared you at the king's bidding. That being so, my good friend, you did a bold thing to set me free. Come, bring me to the king, and I will discourse before the queen. Indeed, my lord, kings are cruel. Who knows what may come of it? I don't care for any honor the king might show me. Go where you will." But again the great being thought it was a bold thing to set him free. He must give him a chance of winning the promised honor. So he said, "Friend, chafe my back with your hand." He did so. His hand became covered with golden hairs. "What shall I do with these hairs, my lord?" "Take them, my friend, show them to the king and queen. Tell them here are hairs from that golden stag. Take my place and discourse to them in the words of these verses I shall repeat. When she hears you, that will alone be sufficient to satisfy her craving." "Recite the law, O king," said the man. And the other taught him 10 stanzas of the holy life, and described the 5 virtues, and dismissed him with a warning to be vigilant. The hunter treated the great being as one would treat a teacher. Thrice he walked round him right wise, did the 4 obeisances, and wrapping the hairs in a lotus leaf went away. The 3 animals accompanied him for a little way, then after feeding and drinking, returned to their parents. Father and mother questioned him. "Rohanta, my son, we heard you were caught, and how came you free?" They put the question in a stanza. "How didst thou win thy liberty when life was nearly done? How did the hunter set thee free from treacherous trap, my son?" In answer to which the Bodhisattva repeated 3 stanzas. "Jataka won me liberty with words that charmed the ear, that touched the heart, that pierced the heart, words uttered sweet and clear. Sutana won me liberty with words that charmed the ear, that touched the heart, that pierced the heart, words uttered sweet and clear. The hunter gave me liberty, these charming words to hear, that touched the heart, that pierced the heart, words uttered sweet and clear." His parents expressed their gratitude, saying, "He with his wife and family, oh happy may they be, as we are happy to behold Rohanta now set free." Now the huntsman came out of the wood, and went to the king. Then saluting him stood on one side. The king, when he saw him, said, "Come tell me, hunter, dost thou say, 'See the deer's hide I bring,' or hast thou no deer's hide to show because of anything?" The hunter replied, "Into my hands the creature came, into my privy snare, and was fast caught. But others free attended on him there. Then pity made my flesh to creep, a pity strange and new. If I should slay this deer, thought I, then I shall perish too. What were these deer, O hunter, what their nature and their ways? What color theirs, what quality to merit such high praise?" The king put this question several times over, as one much astonished. The hunter replied in this stanza. "With silvery horns and graceful shape, with hide and fell most bright, red slot, and shining brilliant eyes all lovely to the sight." As he repeated this stanza, the huntsman placed in the king's hand those golden hairs of the great being, and in another verse summed up the description of the character of these deer. "Such is their nature and their ways, my lord, and such these deer. They used to find their parents' food. I could not fetch them here. In these words he described the qualities of the great being, and of the stag Citta, and of Sutana the doe. Adding this, the royal stag, O king, showed me his hairs, commanding me to take his place, and to declare the law before the queen in 10 stanzas of a holy life. Then, sitting upon a golden throne, he declared the law in those stanzas. The queen's craving was satisfied. The king was pleased, and repeated these stanzas, as he rewarded the huntsman with great honor. A jeweled earring give I thee, 100 drams of gold, a lovely throne like flower of flax, with cushions laid fourfold, 2 wives of equal rank and worth, a bull and kine 50, my benefactor, and I'll rule with justice evermore. Trade, farming, gleaning, usury, whatever thy calling be, see that thou sin not, but by these support thy family. When he heard these words of the king's, he answered, No house or home for me. Grant me, my lord, to become an ascetic. The king's consent given, he handed over the king's rich gifts to his wife and family, and went away to Himalaya, where he embraced the ascetic life, and cultivated the 8 attainments, and became destined for Brahma's world. And the king clave to the Great One's teaching, and went to swell the hosts of heaven. The teaching endured for 1,000 years. This discourse ended, the master said, Thus, brethren, long ago as now Ananda renounced life for my sake. Then he identified the birth. At that time, Channa was the huntsman and Sariputta the king. A sister was Queen Kema. Some of the king's family were the father and mother. Upalavanna was Sutana. Ananda was Citta. The Sakya clan were the 80,000 deer, and I was myself the royal stag Rohanta. To friends and courtiers, warrior king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. In war and travel, warrior king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. In town and village, warrior king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. In every land and realm, O king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. To Brahmins and ascetics all, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. To beasts and birds, O warrior king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. Do righteously, O warrior king. From this all blessings flow. By following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. With watchful vigilance, O king, on paths of goodness go. The Brahmins, Indra, and the gods have won their godhead so. These are the maxims told of old, and following wisdom's ways. The goddess of all happiness herself to heaven did raise. In this manner did the huntsman declare the law, as the great being had shown him, with a Buddha's skill, as though he were bringing down to earth the heavenly Ganges. The crowd with 1,000 voices cried approval. The queen's longing was satisfied when she heard the discourse. Unto thy parents, warrior king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. To wife and child, O warrior king, do righteously, and so, by following a righteous life to heaven the king shall go. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 502. Hamsa Jataka. There go the birds, etc. This story the master told while dwelling in the bamboo grove, about Elder Ananda's renunciation of life. Then also the brethren were talking in the hall of truth about the elder's good qualities. When the master came in and asked them what they sat talking of there, he said, This is not the first time, brethren, that Ananda has renounced his life for my sake, but he did the same before. And then he told them a story of the past. Once upon a time, there reigned in Benares a king named Bahupataka, or the father of many sons, and his queen consort was Kema. At that time the great being dwelt on Mount Siddhakuta, and he was the chief of 90,000 wild geese, having come to life as a golden goose. And at that time, as already recounted, the queen saw a dream, and told the king she had conceived a woman's craving to hear a golden goose discourse of the law. When the king inquired, were there any such creatures as golden geese, he was told yes, there were on Mount Sattigumba. Then he had made a lake which he called Kima, and caused to be planted all manner of food corn, and daily in the 4 quarters made proclamation of immunity to be cried, and sent forth a hunter to catch geese. How this man was sent forth, and his watching of the birds, and how news was told the king when the golden geese came, and in what manner the snare was set and the great being was caught in the snare, how Sambhuta chief captain of the geese saw him not in the 3 divisions of the geese, and returned, all this will be set forth in the Maha birth. Now as then the great being was caught in the noose and stick, and even as he hung in the noose at the end of the stick, he stretched forth his neck looking along the way that the geese had gone, and being Sambhuta as he came, thought, when he comes I will put him to the test. So when he came, the great being repeated 3 stanzas. There go the birds, the ruddy geese, all overcome with fear. O golden yellow Sambhuta, depart, what want you here? My kith and kin deserted me. Away they all have flown, without a thought they fly away. Why are you left alone? Fly, noble bird, with prisoners no fellowship can be. Sambhuta, fly, nor lose the chance while you may yet be free. To which Sambhuta replied, sitting on the mud, no, I'll not leave you, royal goose, when trouble draweth nigh, but stay I will, and by your side will either live or die. Thus Sambhuta with a lion's note, and Jataka answered with this stanza. A noble heart, brave words are these, Sambhuta, which you say, 'twas but to put you to the test I bade you fly away. As they were thus conversing together, up comes the huntsman, staff in hand, at the top of his speed. Sambhuta encouraged Jataka, and flew to meet the man, respectfully declaring the virtues of the royal bird. Immediately the hunter's heart was softened, which Sambhuta perceiving, went back, and stood encouraging the king of the geese. And the hunter approaching the king of the geese, recited the 6th stanza. They foot it by unfooted ways, birds flying in the sky, and did you not, O noble goose, afar the snare espy? The great being said, when life is coming to an end, and death's hour draws anigh, though you may close upon it come, nor trap nor snare you spy. The hunter, pleased with the bird's remark, then addressed 3 stanzas to Sambhuta. There go the birds, the ruddy geese, all overcome with fear, and you, O golden yellow fowl, are still left waiting here. They ate and drank, the ruddy geese. Uncaring they are flown, away they scurry through the air, and you are left alone. What is this fowl, that when the rest deserting him have flown, though free you join the prisoner? Why are you left alone? Sambhuta replied, he is my comrade, friend, and king, dear as my life is he. Forsake him, no, I never will, until death calls for me. On hearing this the hunter was much pleased, and thought within him, if I should harm virtuous creatures like these, the earth would gape open and swallow me up. What care I for the king's reward? I will set them free. And he repeated a stanza. Now seeing that for friendship's sake you are prepared to die, I set your king and comrade free, to follow where you fly. This said, he drew down Jataka from the stick, and loosed the noose, and took him to the bank, and pitifully washed the blood from him, and set the dislocated muscles and tendons. And by reason of his kindness of heart, and by the might of the great being's perfections, on the instant his foot became whole again, and not a mark showed where he had been caught. Sambhuta beheld the great being with joy, and gave thanks in these words, with all your kindred and your friends. O hunter, happy be, as I am happy to behold the king of birds set free. When the hunter heard this, he said, now you may depart, friend. Then the great being said to him, did you capture me for your own purposes, my good sir, or at the bidding of another? He told him the facts. The other wondered whether it were better to return to Sattigumba, or go to the town. If I go to the town, he thought, the hunter will be rewarded, the queen's craving will be appeased, Sambhuta's friendship will be made known. then also by virtue of my wisdom I shall receive the lake Kima as a free gift. It is better therefore to go to the city. This determined, he said, Huntsman, take us on your carrying pole to the king, and he shall set me free if he will. My lord, kings are hard. Go your ways. What? I have softened a hunter like thee, and shall I not find favor with a king? Leave that to me. Your part, friend, is to convey us to him. The man did so. When the king set eyes on the geese, he was delighted. He placed both the geese on a golden perch, gave them honey and fried grain to eat and sweetened water to drink, and holding his hands out in supplication prayed them to speak of the law. The king of the geese, seeing how eager he was to hear, first addressed him in pleasant words. These are the stanzas expressing the converse of king and goose one with another. Now has his honor health and wealth, and is the kingdom full of welfare and prosperity, and does he justly rule? Oh, here is health and wealth, O goose, and here's a kingdom full of welfare and prosperity, with just and righteous rule. Is there no blemish seen amid your court, and are your foes far off, and like the shadow on the south, which never grows? There is no blemish seen amid my courtiers, and my foes far off are like the shadow on the south, which never grows. And is your queen of equal birth, obedient, sweet of speech, fruitful, fair, famous, waiting on your wishes, doing each? Oh yes, my queens of equal birth, obedient, sweet of speech, fruitful, fair, famous, waiting on my wishes, doing each. O fostering ruler, have you sons a many, nobly bred, quick-witted, easy men to please whatever thing be sped? O Dadaratha, sons I have of fame 61. Tell them their duty. They'll not leave your good advice undone. On hearing this, the great being gave them admonition in 5 stanzas. He that puts off until too late the effort to do good, though nobly bred, with virtue dowered, yet sinks beneath the flood. His knowledge fades, great loss is his, as one moonblind at night sees all things swollen twice their size with his imperfect sight. Who sees the truth in falsity no wisdom gains at all, as on a rugged mountain path the deer will often fall. If any strong courageous man loves virtue, follows right, though but a low-born churl, he burns like bonfires in the night. By using this similitude all wisdom's truths explain. Cherish your sons till wise they grow, like seedlings in the rain. Thus did the great being discourse to the king the livelong night. The queen's craving was appeased. By sunrise he established him in the virtues of kings, and exhorted him to be vigilant. Then with Sambhuta flew out of the northern window and to Citta away. After this discourse, the master said, Thus, brethren, this man offered his life for me before, and then he identified the birth. At that time Channa was the huntsman, Sariputta the king, a sister was Queen Kima, the Sakya tribe was the flock of geese, Ananda was Sambhuta, and I was the goose king myself. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 503. Sattigumba Jataka. With a great host, etc. This story the master told while sojourning in the deer park Matakuchi, about Devdatta. When Devdatta threw the stone, and a fragment pierced the Blessed One's foot, there was great pain in it. Numbers of the brethren gathered to see the Tathagata. Now when the Blessed One saw the people gathered together, he said to them, Brethren, this place is crowded. There will be a great gathering. Come now, carry me in a litter to Matakuchi. So then the brethren did. Jātaka made the Tathagata's foot well. The brethren sitting before the master talked of it. Sirs, a sinner is Devdatta and sinners are all his people. The sinner keeps company with the sinful. The master asked, "What do ye talk of, brethren?" They told him. Said he, "It has been so before, and this is not the first time Devdatta the sinner has kept sinful company." Then he told them a story of the past. Once upon a time, a king named Pancala reigned in the city of Uttara Pancala. The great being was born as the son of the king of the parrots, in a grove of silk cotton trees which grew on a high tableland in the heart of a forest. There were 2 brothers. Upwind from this hill was a robber village, where 500 robbers dwelt. Under its lee was a hermitage with 500 sages. About the time when the parrots were molting came a whirlwind that carried off one of the parrots, and he fell in the robber village among the robbers' weapons. And because he fell there, they called him Sattigumba, or bristling spears. The other parrot fell in the hermitage, among the flowers which grew on a sandy spot, from which cause he was named Pupvika, the flower bird. Sattigumba grew up amongst the robbers, Pupvika with the sages. One day the king in brave array, at the head of a great company, drove out in his splendid chariot to hunt the deer. Not far from the city, he entered a grove beautiful with a rich crop of flowers and fruit. He said, "If anyone lets a deer go by him, he shall answer it." Then he descended from the chariot, and took cover, standing, bow in hand in the hut assigned him. The beaters beat the bushes to put up the game. An antelope rose and looked for a way. He saw a gap by the king, got through it and away. Everyone asked who had let the deer go past. It was the king. Hearing this they went and made fun of him. The king in his self-conceit could not stomach the sport. "Now I'll catch that deer," cried he, and up into his chariot. "Full speed," he said to the charioteer, and away he went after the deer. So quick went the king, that the others could not keep up with him. King and charioteer, these 2 alone, went on till midday, but saw no deer. The king then turned back, and seeing near the robber village a delightful glen, he alighted, bathed and drank, and came up from the water. Then the charioteer brought out a rug from the chariot, and spread it beneath the shade of a tree. The king lay on it, the charioteer sat at his feet chafing them. The king now dozed, now awoke. The people of the robber village, all the robbers even, had gone forth into the woods to attend the king. Thus in the village no one was left but Sattigumba and the cook, a man named Patakalamba. At that moment Sattigumba, coming out of the village, and seeing the king, thought, "What if we kill yon fellow as he sleeps, and take his ornaments?" So he returned to Patakalamba, and told him all about it. To explain this the master recited 5 stanzas. With a great host Pancala's king went out to hunt the deer. Deep in the woods the monarch strayed, and not a soul was near. Lo, he beholds within the wood a shelter thieves had made. Out came a parrot, and forthwith these cruel words he said. "A young man riding in a car, with jewels many a one, and on his brow a golden crown shines ruddy like the sun. Both king and driver lie asleep there in the high midday. Come, let us spoil them of their wealth and take it quick away. 'Tis quiet as the deep midnight. Both king and driver sleep. Their wealth and jewels let us take and keep. Kill them, and pile boughs on them in a heap." Thus addressed, the man went out and looked, and seeing that it was a king, he was frightened, and recited this stanza. "Why, Sattigumba, art thou mad? What words are these I hear? Kings are like blazing bonfires, and most perilous to come near." The bird answered in another stanza. "Fools talk, Patakalamba, this, and thou art mad, not I. My mother's naked. Why contemn the calling we live by?" Now the king awoke, and hearing them talk together in the language of men, perceiving the danger, he recited the following stanza to arouse his charioteer. "Up with you quick, friend charioteer, and yoke the chariot. Seek we another shelter, since this parrot I like not." He rose quickly and put to the team, then recited a stanza. "The car is yoked, O mighty king, is yoked and ready there. Step in, O king, and let us go seek shelter otherwhere." No sooner was he inside, than away flew the thoroughbreds swift as the wind. When Sattigumba saw the chariot departing, overwhelmed with excitement he repeated 2 stanzas. "Now where are all the fellows gone that used to haunt this spot? Away Pancala flies, let go because they saw him not. Shall he get clear away with life? take javelin, spear, and bow. Away Pancala flies. Behold, oh, do not let him go. So he raved, fluttering to and fro. Meanwhile, in due course the king came to the hermitage of the sages. At that time the sages were all gone gathering fruits and roots, and only the parrot Papa was left in the hermitage. When he saw the king, he went to meet him and addressed him courteously. Then the master recited 4 stanzas to explain. The parrot with his ruddy beak right courteously did say, "Welcome, O king! A happy chance directed thee this way. Mighty thou art and glorious. What errand brings thee, pray?" "The tinduk and the pile leaves and casamari sweet. Though few and little, take the best we have, O king, and eat. And this cool water from a cave high hidden on a hill, O mighty monarch, take of it, drink if it be thy will. All gleaning in the wood are they who here are wont to live. Arise, O king, thyself and take. I have no hands to give." The king, pleased at this courteous address, answered with a couple of stanzas. "No better fowl was ever hatched, a very righteous bird. But the other parrot over there said many a cruel word. Oh, let him not go hence alive. Oh, come and slay or bind." He cried, "I sought this hermitage and safety here I find." Thus addressed by the king, Pupvika uttered 2 stanzas. "Brothers we are, O mighty king, of one self mother bred, reared both together in one tree, in different pastures fed. For Sattigumba to the thieves, I to the sages came, those bad, these good, and hence it comes our ways are not the same." He then explained the differences in detail, repeating a pair of stanzas. Their wounds and bonds and trickery, cheating and shabby turns, raiding and deeds of violence. Such is the lore he learns. Here self-control, sobriety, kindness, the right and true, shelter and drink for strangers. These were round me as I grew. Next he declared the law to the king in the following stanzas. To whomsoever, good or bad, a man shall honor pay, vicious or virtuous, that man holds him beneath his sway. Like as the comrade one admires, like as the chosen friend, such will become the man who keeps beside him in the end. Friendship makes like, and touch by touch infects, you'll find it true. Poison the arrow, and ere long the quiver's poison too. The wise eschews bad company, for fear of staining touch. Wrap rotten fish in grass, you'll find the grass stinks just as much. And they who keep fools' company themselves will soon be such. Sweet frankincense wrap in a leaf, the leaf will smell as sweet. So they themselves will soon grow wise, that sit at wise men's feet. By this similitude the wise should his own profit know. Let him eschew bad company and with the righteous go. Heaven waits the righteous, but the bad are doomed to hell below. The king was pleased with this exposition. Then the sages returned also. The king greeted the sages, saying, "Be gracious, sirs, come and take up your abode in my grounds," and prevailed on them to accept the invitation. When he got home again, he proclaimed immunity for all parrots. The sages came thither too and visited him. And the king gave them his park to live in, and took care of them so long as he lived. When he went to swell the hosts of heaven, his son had the royal umbrella raised over him, and he also took care of the sages, and so it went on from father to son through 7 generations of kings all bounteous in alms. And the great being dwelt in the woods, until he passed away according to his deeds. When this lesson was ended, the master said, "Thus, brethren, you see that Devdatta kept bad company before, as he now does." Then he identified the birth. At that time, Devdatta was Sattigumba, his followers were the robbers. Ananda was the king, the Buddha's followers were the sages, and I myself was Parrot Pupvika. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 504. Bhallatiya Jataka. Was a king Bhallatiya, etc., This story the master told while dwelling at Jetavana about Malika, the Jessamine bride. One day we are told there was a quarrel between her and the king about conjugal rights. The king was angry and would not look at her. I suppose, she thought, the Tathagata does not know that the king is wroth with me. When the master learnt of it, next day, he sought alms in Benares, accompanied by the brethren, and then repaired to the gate of the king's palace. The king came to meet him and relieved him of his bowl, took him up on the terrace, set the brethren down in due order, gave them the water of welcome, offered them excellent food. After the meal he sat down on one side. "Why?" asked the master. "Why does not Malika appear?" He said, "'Tis her own foolish pride in her prosperity." The master said, "O great king, long, long ago when you were a fairy, you kept apart for one night from your mate, and then went mourning for 700 years. Then, at his request, he told a story of the past. Once upon a time, a king named Bhallatiya reigned in Benares. Seized with a desire to eat venison broiled on charcoal, he gave the kingdom in charge to his courtiers, girt himself with the 5 weapons, and with a well-trained pack of clever pedigree hounds he issued forth from the city and went to Himalaya. He traveled along the Ganges until he could get no higher, then followed a tributary stream for some distance, killing deer and pig, and eating the flesh broiled, until he had climbed to a great height. There, when the pleasant stream ran full, the water was breast-high, but at other times it was no more than knee-deep. At that time there were fish and tortoises of all sorts gambolling, sand at the water's edge like silver, trees on both banks bending beneath a load of flowers and fruit. Many a bird and be well drunken with the juice of fruit and honey of flowers flitted about in the shade, whither herds of all manner of deer did frequent. Now on the bank of this beautiful mountain stream 2 fairies fondly embraced and kissed one another, then fell a weeping and wailing most pitifully. As the king climbed Mount Gandhamadana by way of this river bank, he espied these 2 fairies. "What can they be weeping about in this manner?" thought he. "I will question them." A glance to his hounds, a snap of the fingers, and at this sign the thoroughbred dogs, which knew their work well, crept into the underwood and crouched down on their bellies. As soon as he saw they were out of the way, he laid down his bow and quiver and other weapons by a tree that stood near, and without letting his footsteps be heard stole gently up to the fairies, and asked them, "Why do you weep?" To explain this, the master repeated 3 stanzas. Was a king Bhallatiya, and out a-hunting he would go, climbs the fragrant mount and finds it, full of sprites and flowers that blow. Straight he quiets every hound, lays bow and quiver on the ground, forward steps to ask a question, where a pair of fays were found. Winter's gone, then why return, to talk and talk beside the burn? O you human-seeming creatures, what men call you I would learn. To the king's question, the male fairy said nothing, but his mate answered as follows. Mulla 3-peak yellow hill, we traverse, following each cool rill. Human like the wild things deem us, huntsmen call us goblins still. Then the king recited 3 stanzas. Though like lovers you caress, you weep as full of deep distress. O you human-seeming creatures, why this weeping? Come, confess. Though like lovers you caress, you weep as full of deep distress. O you human-seeming creatures, why this sorrowing? Come, confess. Though like lovers you caress, you weep as full of deep distress. O you human-seeming creatures, why this mourning? Come, confess. The stanzas which follow were said by each in course of address and answer. We apart one night had lain, both loveless, full of bitter pain, thinking each of each, but never will that night come back again. Why then spend that night alone, which cost you many a sigh and groan? O you human-seeing creatures, money lost, a father gone, shaded thick yon river flows, between the rocks, a storm arose, then with anxious care to find me, right across my loved one goes. All the while with busy feet, I gathered thyme and meadowsweet, all to make my love a garland, and myself when we should meet, clustering harebell, violet blue, and white narcissus fresh with dew, all to make my love a garland, and myself when we should meet. Then I plucked a bunch of rose, That is the fairest flower that grows, all to make my love a garland, and myself when we should meet. Flowers next and leaves I found, and strewed them thickly on the ground, where the livelong night together we might slumber soft and sound. Sandal and sweet woods anon I pounded small upon a stone, perfume for my love's limbs making, sweetest perfume for my own. By the river flowing fast, I gathered lilies to the last. Evening came, the river swelling, made it hopeless to get past. There we stood on either shore, each on other gazing o'er. How we laughed and cried together. Ah, that night we suffered sore. Morning came, the sun was high, and soon we saw the river dry. Then we crossed and close embracing, both at once we laugh and cry. 700 years but 3, since we were parted I and he. When two loving hearts are severed, seems a whole long life to be. What the limit of your years, if this by rumor old appears, or the teaching of the elders? Tell it me and have no fears. 1,000 summers, strong and hale, never deadly pains assail. Little sorrow, bliss abundant, to the end love's joys prevail. The king thought as he listened, these creatures who are less than human, go weeping for 700 years for one night's parting. And here am I, lord of a realm of 300 leagues, leaving all my magnificence and wandering about the forest. It is a great mistake. He returned immediately. Arrived at Benares, the courtiers asked him whether he had seen any marvelous thing in the Himalayas. He told them the whole story, and thenceforward gave alms and enjoyed his wealth. Explaining this matter, the master repeated this stanza. Thus instructed by the fays, the king returned upon his ways, ceased to hunt and fed the needy, and enjoyed the fleeting days. 2 more stanzas he added. Take a lesson from the fays, and quarrel not but mend your ways, lest you suffer like the fairy, your own error all your days. Take a lesson from the fays, and bicker not but mend your ways, lest you suffer like the fairy, your own error all your days. Now rose the Lady Mallika from her couch, when she heard the Tathagata's admonition, and joining hands she made reverent obeisance, while she repeated the last stanza. Holy man with willing mind, I hear thy words so good and kind. Blessings on thee. Tu hast spoken. All my sorrows left behind. Ever afterwards the king of Kosala lived with her in harmony. This discourse ended, the master identified the birth. At that time the king of Kosala was the fairy, Lady Mallika was his mate, and I myself was King Bhallatiya. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nibbida. 505. Somanassa Jataka. Who does thee harm, etc. This story the master told while dwelling at Jetavana, how Devdatta went about to slay him. Then the master said, This is not the first time, brethren, that Devdatta has sought to slay me, but he did the same thing before. Then he told them a story of the past. Once upon a time, in the kingdom of Kuru and the city of Uttarapankala, a king reigned whose name was Renu. At that time there was an ascetic Maharakata who dwelt in Himalaya with a company of 500 other ascetics. While visiting the country to get salt and seasoning, he came to Uttarapankala and then abode in the royal park. Seeking alms with his people, he came to the king's door, and the king, beholding the sages and being pleased with their manners, invited them to be seated upon a magnificent dais and gave them good food to eat. He then asked them to remain in his park for the rain season. He accompanied them into the park and provided places to dwell in, gave them the things necessary for the religious life, and took leave of them. After that they all received their meals in the palace. Now the king was childless and desired sons, but no sons were born to him. When the season of rains was over, Maharakata said, Now the Himalaya region is pleasant. Let us return thither. Then he took leave of the king, who showed them all honor and bounty, and departed. On the journey at noontide he left the high road, and with his people sat down on the soft grass beneath a shady tree. The ascetics began to talk. There is no sun, they said, in the palace to keep up the royal line. It would be a blessing if the king could get a son and continue the succession. Maharakota, hearing their talk, pondered, will the king have a son or no? He perceived that the king would have a son and said, do not be anxious, sirs. This night at dawn a son of the gods will come down and will be conceived by the queen consort. A sham ascetic heard it and thought, now I will become a confidant of the royal house. When the time came for the ascetics to leave, he lay down and made as though he were sick. Come, let us go, they said. I cannot, said he. Maharakota learnt why the man lay still. Follow us when you can, he said, and with the rest of the sages went on to Himalaya. Now the cheat ran back as fast as he could, and standing at the palace door, sent in a message that one of Maharakota's attendants was come. He was summoned at once by the king, and going up to the terrace, sat in a seat which they showed him. The king greeted him and sitting on one side, asked after the health of the sages. You have come back very soon, he said. What is the cause of your so speedy return, O mighty king? He replied. As the sages were all sitting comfortably together, they began to say how great a blessing it would be if the king could have a son to keep up his line. When I heard it, I pondered whether the king should get a son or no, and by divine vision I beheld a mighty son of the gods, and saw that he was about to descend, that he might be conceived by your queen consort Sattigumba. Then I thought, if they know not, they may perchance destroy the life conceived. So I must tell them, and to tell you the news, O king, I am come. Now I have told it, let me depart again. No, no, friend, quoth the king, that must not be, and highly delighted he brought the cheat into his park, and assigned him a place to dwell in. Thenceforward he lived in the king's household and got his food there, and his name was Dibakakuka, the man of divine vision. Then the Bodhisattva came down from the heaven of the 33, and was conceived there, and when he was born they gave him the name of Somanassa Kumara, Prince Delight, and he was reared after the manner of princes. Now the false ascetic in a corner of the park used to plant vegetables and pot herbs and runners, and by selling these to the market gardeners he amassed much wealth. When the Bodhisattva was 7 years old, there was a rebellion on the frontier. The king went out to quell it, giving the ascetic Dibakakuka into the prince's charge, with orders not to neglect him. One day the prince went out to see the ascetic. He found him with both yellow robes, upper and under, knotted up, holding a water jar in each hand, and watering his plants. This false ascetic, thought he, instead of doing the ascetic's duty, does the work of a gardener. Then he asked, what are you doing, gardener, worldling? So he put him to shame and left him without salute. Now I have made an enemy of this fellow, thought the man. Who knows what he will do? I must make an end of him at once. About the time when the king was to return, the man threw his stone bench on one side, broke his water pot to bits, scattered grass about in his hut, smeared all his body with oil, went into the hut and lay down on his pallet, wrapped up head and all, making as though he were in much pain. The king returned and made a circuit about the city right wise. But before he would enter his own house, he went to see his friend Dibakakuka. Standing by the door of the hut, he saw all in disorder, and entered wondering what was the matter. There was the man lying down. The king chafed his feet, repeating the first stanza. Who does thee harm or scorn? Why dost thou sorrow sore? Whose parents now must mourn? Who lies here on the floor? At this the impostor rose up groaning, and said the second stanza. Thee I rejoice to see, O king, though absent long. Your son, who came to me, wrought unprovoked this wrong. The connection of the following verses is clear. They are arranged in due succession. Executioners, what ho! Servants, take your swords and go. Strike Prince Somanassa dead. Hither bring his noble head. The royal messengers went forth, and to the prince they cry, His Majesty has cast thee off, and thou, O prince, must die. There the prince lamenting stands, craving grace with folded hands. Spare me yet a while and bring me alive to see the king. They heard his prayer, and to the king his son the servants led. He saw his father from afar, and thus to him he said, Let thy men take sword and slay. Only hear me first, I pray. O great monarch, tell me this, what is it I've done amiss? The king answered, High estate is fallen very low, your error is very great. And explained it in this stanza. Water morn and eve he draws, tends the fire without a pause. Dare you call this holy man worldling? Answer if you can. My lord, said the prince, if I call a worldling, what harm is done? And he repeated a stanza. He possesses trees and fruits, and, my lord, all kinds of roots, tends them with incessant care. Then he's worldly, I declare. And that is the reason, he went on, why I called him a worldling. If you do not believe me, inquire of the market gardeners at the 4 gates. The king made inquiry. They said, Yes, we buy from him vegetables and all sorts of fruit. When he found out this greengrocery business, he made it known. The prince's people went into the man's hut and ferreted out a bundle of rupees and small coins, the price of the green food, which they showed to the king. Then the king knew the great being was guiltless, and said a stanza. True it was that trees and roots he possessed with many fruits, tending with incessant care, worldly as thou didst declare. Then the great being thought, while an ignorant fool like this is of the king's household, the best thing to do is to go to Himalaya and embrace the religious life. First I will proclaim his sin before the company here assembled, and then this very day I will go and become a religious. So with a bow to the company he cried, Hear ye people as I call, country folk and townsmen all, by this fool's advice the king, guiltless men to death would bring. This said, he asked leave to do it in the next stanza. Thou a strong wide-spreading tree, I an offshoot fixed in thee, here beseech thee, bending low, leave to quit the world and go. The following stanzas give the conversation of the king with his son. Prince, enjoy the wealth you own, and ascend the Kuru throne. Do not leave the world to bring sorrow on yourself. Be king. What of joy can this world give? When in heaven I used to live, there were sights and sounds and smell, taste and touch, the heart loves well. Joys of heaven and nymphs divine, I renounced that once were mine. With a king so weak as thou, I will stay no longer now. If I am foolish weak, my son, this once forgive me what I've done. And if I do the same again, do what thou wilt, I'll not complain. The great being then repeated 8 stanzas, admonishing the king. A thoughtless act, or done without premeditation had, like the miscarriage of a drug, the issue must be bad. A thoughtful act, wherein is careful policy pursued, like a successful medicine, the issue must be good. The idle sensual layman I detest. The false ascetic is a rogue contest. A bad king will a case unheard decide. Wrath in a sage can ne'er be justified. The warrior prince takes careful thought, and well-weighed judgment gives. When kings their judgment ponder well, their fame forever lives. Kings should give punishment with careful measure. Things done in haste they will repent at leisure. Are there good resolutions in the heart? No late repentance brings her bitter smart. They who do deeds which no repentance bring, carefully weighing every single thing, gain what is good and do what satisfies. The holy win the approval of the wise. What ho, my executioners! You cried, go seek my son, and where you find him slay. Where I was sitting by my mother's side, they found me, dragged me cruelly away. A tender nursling treated in this way, I felt their cruel handling very sore. Delivered from a cruel doom today, I'll leave the world, and live in it no more. When the great being had thus discoursed, the king said to his queen, So my young son, Sattigumba, says me nay, Prince Somanassa, delicate and kind. Now since I cannot gain my end today, thyself must see if thou canst turn his mind. But she urged him to renounce the world in this stanza. O be the holy life thy pleasure, son. Renounce the world, to righteousness stick fast. Who of all creatures cruel is to none, blameless to Brahma's world will come at last. Then the king repeated a stanza. This is a marvel which I hear from thee, sorrow to sorrow heaping up on me. I ask thee to persuade our son to stay. Thou dost but urge him more to haste away. Again the queen repeated a stanza. There are who live from sin and sorrow free, blameless, and who nirvana's height attain. If of their noble path the prince would be a partner, to withhold him is in vain. In reply the king recited the last stanza. Surely, 'tis good to venerate the wise, in whom deep wisdom and high thoughts arise. The queen has heard their words and learned their lore. She feels no pain and has no longing more. The great being then saluted his parents, asking them to pardon him if he did amiss, and with a reverent obeisance to the company set his face towards Himalaya. When the people had returned, he, with the deities who had come thither in human shape, traversed the 7 ranges of hills and arrived at Himalaya. In a leaf hut made by the heavenly architect Vipassanā, he entered upon the religious life, and there he was waited upon by deities in the shape of a princely retinue until his 16th year. But the deceitful ascetic was set upon by the crowd and beaten to death. The great being cultivated the faculty of ecstasy, and became destined to Brahma's heaven. This discourse ended, the master said, Thus, brethren, he went about to slay me in former days as now, and then he identified the birth. At that time Devdatta was the impostor, Mahamaya was the mother, Sariputta was Rakita, and I myself was Prince Somanassa. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 506. Campeyya Jataka. Who is it like, etc. This story the master told while dwelling in Jetavana, about the fast day vows. The master said, It is well done, lay brethren, that ye have taken upon you the fast day vows. Wise men of old likewise even renounced the glory of being a serpent king, and lived under these vows. Then, at their request, he told a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Anga was king in the kingdom of Anga, and Magadha king in Magadha, betwixt the realms of Anga and Magadha was a river Campa, where was a place where serpents dwelt, and here a serpent king Campeyya held sway. Sometimes King Magadha took the Anga country, sometimes King Anga took Magadha. One day King Magadha, having fought a battle with Anga and got the worse, mounted his charger and took to flight, pursued by Anga's warriors. When he came to the Campa river, it was in flood. But he said, Better death drowned in this river than death at the hands of my enemies. Then man and horse plunged in the stream. Now the serpent king Campeyya had built him under the water a jeweled pavilion, and there at this moment in the midst of his court he was carousing deep. But the king and his horse plunged into the river just in front of the serpent king. The serpent, beholding this magnificent monarch, conceived a liking for him. Rising from his seat, he made the king sit down upon his own throne, bidding him fear not, and asked why he came plunging into the water. The king told him all as it was. Then said the serpent, Fear nothing, O great king, I will make you master of both kingdoms. Thus he consoled him, and for 7 days he showed him high honor. On the 7th day he with King Magadha left the serpent palace. Then by the serpent king's power, King Magadha got possession of King Anga, and slew him and ruled over the 2 realms together. From that time there was firm affiance between him and the serpent king. Year by year he caused a jeweled pavilion to be built on the bank of the river Campa, and offered tribute to the serpent king at great cost. The serpent king would come forth with a large retinue from his palace to receive the tribute, and all the people beheld the glory of the serpent king. At that time the Bodhisattva was one of a poor family, and he used to go down with the king's people to the riverside. There seeing the serpent king's glory, he became covetous of it, and in this desire he died, and 7 days after the death of the serpent king Campeyya, the Bodhisattva, having given alms and lived a virtuous life, came into being in his palace on his royal couch. His body was like a great festoon of jessamine. When he saw it, he was filled with remorse. As a consequence of my good deeds, quoth he, I have power laid up in the 6 chief worlds of sense, as corn is laid up in a granary. But see, Here am I born in this reptile shape. What care I for life? And so he had thoughts of putting an end to himself. But a young female serpent, named Sumana, seeing him, gave the lead to the rest. This must be Saka, mighty in power, born here to us. Then they all came and made offering to him, with all manner of musical instruments in their hands. That serpent's palace of his became as it were the palace of Saka. The thought of death left him. He put off his serpent shape, and sat on the couch in magnificence of dress and adornment. From that time great was his glory, and he ruled over the serpents. Another time again he repented, thinking, what care I for this reptile shape? I will live under the fasting vows, and from this place I will shake myself free. Amongst men I will go, and learn the truths, and I will make an end of pain. But afterwards he still remained in that same palace, fulfilling the fasting vows, and when the young female serpents came about him all gaily adorned, he generally violated his rule of virtue. After that he went forth from the palace into the park, but they followed him thither, and his vow was broken as before. Then he thought, I must leave this palace, and go into the world of men, and there must I live under the fasting vows. So then on the fast days he went forth from the palace, and lay on the top of an ant-heap by the high road, not far from a frontier village. Said he, those who desire my skin or any part of me, let them take it. Or if any would have me a dancing snake, let them make me so. Thus did he yield his body as a gift, and contracting his hood he lay there observing the fast day vows. Those who went to and fro on the highway espying him, did him worship with scents and perfumes. And the dwellers in that frontier village, holding him to be a serpent king of great power, set up a pavilion over him, spread sand before it, did worship with perfumes and scented things. Now people began to crave sons by his aid, having faith in the great being and doing him worship. The great being kept there the fasting vows on the 14th and 15th days of the half moon, lying upon the ant-heap, and on the first day of the lunar half he would return to his palace. And as he thus fulfilled his vows, time went by. One day his consort Sumana spoke to him thus, my lord, you are wont to go among men to keep your fast vows. The world of men is dangerous, full of fear. Suppose some danger should come upon you. Tell me now by what sign I shall learn of it. Then the great being led her to the side of a lucky pond and said, if anyone strike me or do me hurt, the water in this pond will become turbid. If a rock bird carry me off, the water will disappear. If a snake charmer seize me, the water will turn to the color of blood. These three signs explained to her. He went forth from his palace to keep the fast of the 14th day, went and lay down on the ant-heap, illuminating the ant-heap with the sheen of his body. White was his body as a coil of pure silver, like a ball of red wool was his head. Now in this birth the Bodhisattva's body was thick as a plough head, in the Buddhadatta birth thick as a thigh, in the Sankapala birth as big round as a trough canoe with an outrigger. In those days there was a young Brahmin of Benares come to Takasila to study at the feet of a world-renowned teacher, from whom he had learned the charm which commands all things of sense. Going home along that road, what should he see but the great being? This snake I will catch, thinks he, and I will travel through town and village and royal city, making him dance and amassing great profits. Then he procured magical herbs, and repeating the magic charm he approached the snake. No sooner he heard the sound of this charm, than the great being felt his ears as it were pierced by burning splinters. His head was as though broken by the blow of a sword. What have we here? Thought he. Putting forth his head from the hood, he beheld the snake charmer. Then he thought, my poison is powerful, and if I am angry and send forth the breath of my nostrils, his body will be shattered and scattered like a fist full of chaff. Then my virtue will be broken. I will not look upon him. Closing his eyes, he drew his head within the hood. The Brahmin snake charmer ate a herb, repeated his charm, spat upon him. By virtue of herb and charm, wherever the spittle touched him, blains arose. Then the man seized him by the tail, dragged him, laid him out at full length. With a goat's foot staff he squeezed him till he was weak. Then catching tight hold on his head, crushed him hard. The great being opened his mouth wide. The man dropped spittle in it, and by the herb and charm broke his teeth. The mouth was full of blood. But the great being so feared lest he break his virtue, that he bore all this torment and never so much as opened an eye to glance at him. Then the man said, "I'll weaken this royal snake." From tail to head he squeezed the snake's body as though he would crush his very bones to powder. Then he wrapped him in what they call the cloth wrap, gave him what they call the rope rubbing, caught him by the tail and gave him the cotton blow as they call it. The great being's body was all smeared with blood, and he was in great pain. Seeing that the serpent was now weak, the man made an osier basket in which he laid the snake. Then he carried him to the village, and made him perform to the crowd. Black or blue or what not, round figure and square figure, little or large, whatever the Brahmin desires, that the great being will do, dancing, spreading his hood as if by hundreds or by thousands. The people were so pleased that they gave much money. In one day he would take 1,000 rupees, and things worth another 1,000. At the first the man had intended to let him go free when he should gain 1,000 pieces of money. But when he got it, he thought, "In a small frontier village I have gained all this. From kings and courtiers how much wealth may I look to win?" So he bought a cart and a pleasure car, and in the cart loaded his goods, while he sat in the carriage. Thus with an attendant throng he traversed town and village, making the great being perform, and went on with the intent to show him off before King Ugasena in Benares, and then he would let him go. He used to kill frogs and give them to the royal snake. But the snake each time refused to eat, that none might be killed for his sake. Then the man gave him honey and fried corn. But the great being refused to eat these also, for he thought, "If I take food, I shall be in this basket till I die." In a month's time the Brahmin was come to Benares. There he got much money by making the snake perform in the villages beyond the gates. The king also sent for him and commanded a performance. The man promised this for the morrow, which was the last day of the half-month. Then the king sent a drum beating about the city with proclamation that on the morrow a royal snake would dance in the palace court. Let the people then gather to see it in their multitudes. Next day the courtyard of the palace was adorned, and the Brahmin summoned. He brought in the great being in a jeweled basket on a gay rug, which he set down and himself took a seat. The king came down from the upper story, and sat on his royal seat in the midst of a great concourse of people. The Brahmin took out the great being and made him dance. The people could not keep still. Thousands of kerchiefs waved in the air. A shower of jewels in all 7 kinds fell about the Bodhisattva. It was now the full month since the serpent was caught, and for all that time he had taken no food. Now Sumana began to think, "My dear husband tarries long. It is now a month since he has not returned. What can the matter be?" So she went and looked at the pond. Lo, the water was red as blood. Then she knew that he must have been caught by a snake charmer. Forth from the palace she came, and to the ant-heap. She saw the place where he had been caught, and the place where he had been tormented, and she wept. Then she went to the frontier village and inquired, and learning all the fact, she went on to Benares, and in the midst of the people, above the palace court in the air she stood now lamenting. The great being as he danced looked up in the air, and saw her, and being ashamed crept into his basket, and there he lay. When he crept into the basket, the king cried out, "What is the matter now?" Looking this way and that way, he saw her poised in the air, and recited the first stanza. "Who is it like the lightning shines, or like a blazing star? Goddess or Titaness? Methinks no human thing you are." Their conversation is given in the stanzas following. "No goddess I, nor Titaness, nor human, mighty king, a female of the serpent kind, come for a certain thing. Full of wrath and rage you show, from your eyes the teardrops flow. Say what wrong or what desire brings you, lady? I would know." Crawling serpent, fierce as flame, so they called him, one there came, seized him for his profit, "Sire, freedom for my lord I claim. How could such a starveling wight catch a creature full of might? Daughter of the serpents, say, how to discern the snake aright? Such his might, that e'en this town he could burn to cinders down. But he loves the holy way, and seeks austerity's renown." Then the king asked how the man had caught him. She replied in the following stanza. "On holy days the royal snake, at the 4 ways used to take holy vows. A juggler caught him. Free my husband for my sake. After these words she added yet these other 2 stanzas, begging his release. Lo, 16,000 women gay with jewel and with ring, beneath the waters counted him their refuge and their king. Justly, gently set him free, by the serpent liberty, with gold 100 kine, a village, that will merit win for thee. Then the king recited 3 stanzas. Justly now and gently see, I buy the serpent liberty, with gold 100 kine, a village, that will merit win for me. A jeweled earring give I thee, 100 drams of gold, a lovely throne like flower of flax with cushions laid fourfold, a bull 100 kine, 2 wives of equal birth with thee. Release the holy snake, the deed will meritorious be. To this the hunter made reply, I want no gifts, your majesty, but let the serpent now go free. Thus I now release the serpent, the deed will meritorious be. After this speech he took the great being out of his basket. The serpent king came forth and crept into a flower, where he put off his shape and reappeared in the form of a young man magnificently arrayed. There he stood, as though he had cleft the earth and come through, and down from the sky came Sumana, and stood beside him. The serpent king stood reverently joining his hands in respect to the king. To make all clear, the master recited 2 stanzas. The serpent king Campeyya addressed the king, now free, O king of Kasi, fostering lord, all honor now to thee. I do thee reverence, ere I go again my home to see. Superhuman beings may hardly win belief, they say. If you speak the truth, O serpent, where's your palace? Show the way. But the great being, to make him believe, swore an oath as follows in these 2 stanzas. Should the wind move mountains high, moon and sun fall from the sky, flow upstream the running rivers, I, O king, could never lie. Split the sky, the sea run dry, bounteous mother earth awry, crumpling roll, uproot Mount Meru. Yet, O king, I could not lie. But notwithstanding this assurance, he still disbelieved the great being, and said, Superhuman beings may hardly win belief, they say. If you speak the truth, O serpent, where's your palace? Show the way. Again he repeated the same stanza, adding, You must be grateful for the good deeds wrought by me. Whether I should believe you to be right or not, however, that is for me to decide. This he made clear in the next stanza. Deadly envenomed, full of might, quick in quarrel, shining bright, you are freed by me from prison. Then is gratitude my right. The great being made oath thus to win his belief. He that will no thanks return, happiness should never learn. He should die in basket prison. He in horrid hell should burn. Now the king believed him, and thanked him thus. As that vow of thine is true, anger flee and hate eschew. As we flee the fire in summer, may the rock birds flee from you. The great being too on his part said another stanza meaning to thank the king. As a mother would have done, to an only well-loved son. You are kind to all the serpents. We will serve you, every one. Now the king, eager to visit the serpent's world, gave command that his army should be made ready to go in the following stanza. Yoke the royal cars and stand, trained Cambodian mules at hand, elephants in golden trappings. We will visit serpent land. The next is a stanza of the perfect wisdom. Bounce the tabors, thump the drums, conch and cymbal sounds and thrums, glorious mid a host of women. See King Agasina comes. At the moment he left the city, the great being by his power made visible in the serpent world an enclosing wall of 7 precious things, and gate towers, and all the road of approach to the abode of the serpents he made to be gloriously adorned. By this road the king with his following entered the palace, and saw a delightful spot with mansions in it. Explaining this, the master said, The Lord of Kasi saw the ground sprinkled with golden sand, fair flowers of coral strewn around, gold towers on every hand. So then the king did enter in Campeyya's halls divine, which like the brazen thunderbolt or ruddy sun did shine. Into Campeyya's halls divine the king his entrance made. 1,000 perfumes scent the air. 1,000 trees give shade. Within Campeyya's palace once the king his step advanced. Celestial harps made melody, fair serpent maidens danced. He is shown a golden seat, cushioned and with sandal sweet, where the bevy of fair maidens tread the halls with thronging feet. No sooner was he there seated, than they set before him food divine of choice flavor, and they gave it also to the 16,000 women and to the rest of the company. For 7 days he with his retinue partook of the divine food and drink, and enjoyed all manner of pleasure. Sitting in his fair seat he praised the glory of the great being. "O King of the Serpents," said he, "why did you leave all this magnificence to lie on an ant heap in the world of men and to keep the fast day vows?" The other told him. To explain this the master said, "There the king in pleasure stayed. To Campeyya then he said, Glorious mansions these of thine, ruddy like the sun they shine. Such on earth are none to see. Why wouldst thou a hermit be? Fair and fine these damsels stand, who with taper fingers hold drink in either red-stained hand, breast and body girt with gold. Such on earth are none to see. Why wouldst thou a hermit be? River, fishpond, glassy fair, each with well-built landing stair. Such on earth are none to see. Why wouldst thou a hermit be? Heron, peacock, heavenly geese, charms of cuckoo like to these. Such on earth are none to see. Why wouldst thou a hermit be? Mango, sal, and tullock grown, cassia, trumpet flower full blown. Such on earth are none to see. Why wouldst thou a hermit be? See the lakes, and wafted o'er, scents divine on every shore. Such on earth are none to see. Why wouldst thou a hermit be? Not for life or sons or pelf do I wrestle with myself. 'Tis my craving, if I can, to be born again as man. To this answer the king replied, Bravely drayest, eyes red and bleared, broad-shouldered, shaven head, and beard, like an angel king addressing all the world with sandal smeared. Great in might, in power divine, Lord of all desires, incline, Serpent King, to read my question, how our world surpasses thine. This was answered by the Serpent King as follows. Comes control and cleansing when one is in the world of men. Only there, once man I'll never see nor birth nor death again. The king listened, and thus replied, Surely 'tis good to venerate the wise, in whom deep wisdom and high thoughts arise. When thee and all these maids I behold, I will do virtuous actions manifold. To him the Serpent King said, Surely 'tis good to venerate the wise, in whom deep wisdom and high thoughts arise. When me and all these maids thou dost behold, then do thou virtuous actions manifold. After this speech, Ugasina wished to go, and he took leave, saying, Serpent King, I have stayed long here and I must go. The great being pointed to his treasure, and offered him whatever he wished to take. Saying this, I renounce it, gold untold, tree-high silver heaps. Behold, take and make you walls of silver, take and houses make of gold. Pearls 5,000 loads, I ween, coral blushing in between. Take and spread them in thy palace, till nor earth nor dirt be seen. Such a mansion as I tell, build, and there, O monarch, dwell. Rich will be Benares city. Rule it wisely, rule it well. The king agreed to this suggestion. Then the great being sent proclamation about the city by beat of drum. Let all the attendants of the king take what they will of my wealth, gold and fine gold. And he sent the treasure to the king loaded in several hundred carts. After this the king left the serpent world with great pomp, and returned to Benares. From that time, they say, the ground was all golden throughout India. This discourse ended, the master said, Thus wise men of old left the glories of the serpent world, to keep the fast day vows. Then he identified the birth. At that time, Devdatta was the snake charmer, Rahila's mother was Sumana, Sariputta was Ugasina, and I was myself Campeyya king of the snakes. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 507. Maha Palobhana Jataka. From Brahma's heaven, etc. This story the master told while dwelling in Jetavana, about the defilement of the sanctified. The circumstances have already been given. Here again, said the master, women cause defilement even in sanctified souls, and then told this story of the past. Once upon a time in Benares. Here the story of the past is to be expanded as in the Kula Palobhana birth. Now once again the great being came down from Brahma's world as the king of Kasi's son, and his name was Prince Anithiganda, the woman-hater. In the hands of a woman he would not be. They must needs dress as men to give him the breast. He dwelt in a closet of meditation, and never a woman he saw. To explain this, the master repeated 4 stanzas. From Brahma's heaven a god came down, and here upon this earth. As a king's son whose every wish was law, he had his birth. To Brahma's heaven no deed of lust, no mention, ever came. So born into this world, the prince now loathed its very name. Within the palace he had made a closet all his own, where deep in meditation plunged he passed his days alone. The king, grown anxious for his son, laments to know him there. One only son I have, and he for pleasures will not care. The 5th stanza describes the king's lamentation. Oh, who can tell me what to do? Oh, is there no device? Who'll teach him joys of love to crave, and who can him entice? The next stanza and half a stanza are those of perfect wisdom. A girl there was of graceful shape, of fair and lovely skin. She knew a world of pretty songs, and well could dance and spin. This maiden sought his majesty, and thus she did begin. The other line is spoken by the young girl. I will entice him, if thou wilt in marriage grant him me. The king made answer to the maid, and thus said he, do but succeed in tempting him, thy husband he shall be. The king now gave orders that all opportunity should be afforded her, and sent her to attend upon the prince. In the morning, taking her lute she went and stood just without the prince's sleeping chamber, and touching the lute with her fingertips tried to tempt him by singing in a sweet voice. To explain this, the master said, the maiden went within the house, and where she stood apart, sang ditties sweet and languishing, to pierce a lover's heart. There as the maiden stood and sang, the prince, who heard the sound, straight fell in fancy, and he asked the servants waiting round, what is that sound of melody that comes to me so clear, piercing the heart with thoughts of love, delightful to my ear? A maid, your highness, fair to see, of dalliance infinite, wouldst thou enjoy the sweets of love? Yield, yield to this delight. Ho, hither, nearer let her come, and let her sing yet more. Here let her sing before my face within my closet door. She who had sung without the wall stood in the chamber there. She caught him as an elephant is caught in woodland snare. He felt the joy of love, and lo, see jealousy full grown. No other man shall love, cries he, but I will love alone. No other man but I alone, he cries, and then away, seizes a sword, and runs amok all other men to slay. The people shouting in alarm all to the palace fly. Thy son is slaying every one all unprovoked, they cry. Him did the warrior king arrest, and banish from his face. Within the boundaries of my realm thou shalt not find a place. He took his wife and traveled on till by the sea he stood. There built a hut of leaves, and lived on gleanings from the wood. A holy hermit flying came over the ocean high, entered the hut what time the meal was standing ready by. The woman tempted him. Now see how vile a thing was done. He fell from chastity, and all his magic power was gone. The evening came. The prince returns, and from his gleaning brings, hung to his pole a plenteous store of roots and wildwood things. The hermit sees the prince approach. Down to the shore goes he, thinking to travel through the air, but sinks into the sea. But when the prince beheld the sage down sinking in the sea, pity sprang up within him, and these verses then said he, hither not sailing on the sea, by magic power you came, but now you sink. An evil wife has brought you to this shame. Seducing traitresses, they tempt the holiest to his fall. Down, down they sink, who women know should flee afar from all. Soft speaking, hard to satisfy, as rivers hard to fill. Down, down they sink, who women know should flee far from them still. And whomsoever they may serve for gold or for desire, they burn him up, as fuel burns cast in a blazing fire. The hermit heard the prince's word. He loathed the world so vain, turned to his former path, and rose up in the air again. No sooner had the prince beheld how in the air he rose, he grieved and with a purpose firm the holy life he chose. Then turned religious, wholly quelled his lust and hot desire, and passion quelled, to Brahma's world henceforth he did aspire. This discourse ended, the master said, "Thus, brethren, for woman's sake even sanctified souls do sin." Then he declared the truths. Now at the conclusion of the truths, the backsliding brother achieved sainthood, after which he identified the birth, saying, "At that time I myself was Prince Anithaganda." Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 508. Panca Pandita Jataka. The birth of the 5 wise men will be given in the Maha. Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nipata. 509. Hatthi Jataka. At last we see, etc. This story the master told while dwelling at Jetavana about the renunciation. Then with these words, "It is not the first time, brethren, that the Tathagata made the renunciation, but it was so before." The master told them a story of the past. Once upon a time there reigned in Benares a king named Esukari. His chaplain had been from the days of his youth his favorite companion. They were both childless. As the two were sitting together one day in a friendly manner, they thought, "We have great glory, but never a son or a daughter. Now what is to be done?" Then the king said to the chaplain, "Friend, if a son is born in your house, he shall be lord of my kingdom. But if I have a son, he shall be master of your wealth." The two made a bargain of it on these terms. One day, as the chaplain approached his revenue village and entered by the southern gate, outside the gate he saw a wretched woman who had many sons. 7 sons she had, all hale and hearty. One held pot and plate for cooking, one mat and bedding, one went on before and one followed behind, one held a finger of her, one sat on her hip and one on her shoulder. "Where," asked the chaplain, "is the father of these lads?" "Sir," she replied, "the lads have no father at all for certain." "Why then," said he, "how did you get 7 fine sons like that?" Disregarding the rest of the jungle, she points out a banyan tree that stood by the city gate, and quoth she, "I offered prayer, sir, to the deity which inhabits this tree, and he answered me by giving these lads." "You may go, then," said the chaplain, and descending from his chariot, he went up to the tree and taking hold of a branch shook it, saying, "O divinity, what has the king failed to give thee? Year by year he offers thee tribute of 1,000 pieces of money, and thou givest him no son. What has this beggar wife done for thee, that thou givest her 7? Thou shalt grant the king a son within 7 days, or I will have thee cut down by the roots and chopped up piecemeal." Thus upbraiding the deity of the banyan tree, he went away. Day after day for 6 days he did the same, and on the 6th, grasping the branch he said, "Only one night is left, tree god. If you do not grant a son to my king, down you come." The deity of the tree reflected, till she knew exactly what was the matter. "Yon Brahmin," thought she, "will destroy my home if he gets no son. Well, by what means can I get him a son?" Then she went before the 4 great kings, and told them. "Well," said they, "we cannot give the man a son. To the 28 war lords of the goblins she went next, and all they said was the same. To Saka, king of the gods, she came and told him. He pondered within himself, shall the king get sons worthy of him or no? Then he looked about and saw 4 meritorious sons of the gods. These, it is said, had been in a former existence weavers of Benares, and all their winnings by that trade they would divide into 5 heaps. Of these 4 were their own shares, but the 5th they gave away in common. When born anew from that place they came to the heaven of the 33. Thence again they were born into the Yama world. Thence in due succession they passed up and down through the 6 celestial worlds and enjoyed much glory. Just then the time was when they were due to go from the heaven of the 33 to the Yama heaven. Saka went to seek them and summoned them and said, Holy sirs, you must go to the world of men, to be conceived in the womb of King Esukari's chief consort. Good, my lord, said they to these words. We will go, but we do not want anything to do with a royal house. We will be born in the chaplain's family, and while yet young we will renounce the world. Then Saka approved them for their promise, and returned, and told all to the deity that lived in the tree. Much pleased, the tree god took leave of Saka, and went to her dwelling place. But next day up came the chaplain, and with him strong men whom he had gathered, having each a razor adze or the like. The chaplain approached the tree, and seizing a branch cried out, What ho, god of the tree! This is now the 7th day, since I begged a favor of you. The time of thy destruction is come. The tree deity by her great power cleft the tree trunk and came forth, and in a sweet voice addressed him thus, One son, Brahmin? Pooh! I will give you 4. Said he, I want no sons. Give one to my king. No, she said, I will give only to you. Then give 2 to the king and 2 to me. No, the king shall have none, you shall have all 4, but they shall be only given to you, for they will not live in a worldly household. In the days of their youth they will renounce the world. Just give me the sons, and I will see to it they do not renounce the world, said he. Thus the deity granted his prayer for children, and returned to her dwelling place. Ever afterwards that deity was held in high honor. Now the eldest god came down, and was conceived by the Brahmin's wife. On his name day they called him Hathipala, the elephant driver, and to hinder him from renouncing the world, they entrusted him to the care of some keepers of elephants, amongst whom he grew up. When he was old enough to walk on his feet, the second was born of the same woman. At his birth they named him Asapala or groom, and he grew up amongst those who kept horses. The third at his birth was called Gopala, the cowherd, and he grew up amongst the cattle breeders. Ajapala or goatherd was the name given to the 4th when he also was born, and he grew up among the goat herds. When they grew older they were lads of auspicious omen. Now for fear of their renouncing the world, all the ascetics who had so done were banished from the kingdom. In the whole realm of Kasi not one was left. The lads were rough. In what way soever they went, they plundered those gifts of ceremony which were sent here or there. When Hathipala was 16 years old, the king and the chaplain, seeing his bodily perfection, thought thus within them, The lads are grown big. When the umbrella of royalty is uplifted, what shall be done with them? As soon as the ceremony of sprinkling is done upon them, they will grow very masterful. Ascetics will come, they will see them and will become ascetics also. Once they have done this, the whole country will be in confusion. First let us test them, and afterwards have the ceremonial sprinkling. So they both dressed themselves up like ascetics, and went about seeking alms until they came to the door of the house where Hathipala lived. The lad was pleased and delighted to see them. Approaching, he greeted them with respect, and recited 3 stanzas. At last we see a Brahmin like a god, with top not great, with teeth uncleansed, and foul with dust, and burdened with a weight. At last we see a sage, who takes delight in righteousness, with robes of bark to cover him, and with the yellow dress. Accept a seat, and for your feet fresh water. It is right, to offer gifts of food to guests, accept as we invite. Thus he addressed them one after the other. Then the chaplain said to him, Hathipala my son, you say this because you do not know us. You think we are sages from the Himalayas, but such we are not, my son. This is King Esukari, and I am your father the chaplain. "Then," said the lad, "why are you dressed like sages?" "To try you," said he. "Why try me?" he asked. "Because, if you see us without renouncing the world, we are ready to perform the ceremony of sprinkling, and make you king." "Oh, my father," quoth he, "I want no royalty. I will renounce the world." Then his father replied, "Son Hathippala, this is not a time for renouncing the world." And he explained his intent in the 4th stanza. "First learn the Vedas, get you wealth and wife. And sons, enjoy the pleasant things of life. Smell, taste, and every sense. Sweet is the wood, to live in then, and then the sage is good." Hathippala replied with a stanza. "Truth comes not by the Vedas nor by gold, nor getting sons will keep from getting old. From sense there is release, as wise men know. In the next birth we reap as now we sow." In answer to the young man, the king now recited a stanza. "Most true the words that from thy lips do go. In the next birth we reap as now we sow. Thy parents now are old, but may they see 100 years of health in store for thee." "What do you mean, my lord?" asked the prince, and repeated 2 stanzas. "He who in death, O king, a friend can find, and with old age a covenant hath signed. For him that will not die be this thy prayer, 100 years of life to be his share. As one who on a river ferries o'er a boat and journeys to the other shore, so mortals do inevitably tend to sickness and old age, and death's the end." In this manner he showed these persons how transient are the conditions of mortal life, adding this advice: "As you stand there, O great king, and as I speak with you, even now sickness, old age, and death are drawing nearer to me. Then be vigilant." So saluting the king and his father, he took with him his own attendants, and forsook the kingdom of Benares, and departed with the intent to embrace the religious life. And a great company of people went with the young man Hathippala. "For," said they, "this religious life must be a noble thing." The company extended a league long. He with this company proceeded until he came to the Ganges bank. There he induced the mystic trance by gazing at the water of the Ganges. "There will be a great concourse here," thought he. "My 3 younger brothers will come, my parents, king, queen, and all. They with their attendants will embrace the religious life. Benares will be empty. Until they come I will remain here." So he sat there, exhorting the crowd assembled. Next day the king and his chaplain thought, "And so Prince Hathippala has really renounced his claim on the kingdom, and is sitting on the Ganges bank, whither he went to follow the religious life, and took a great multitude with him. But let us try a Sapala, and sprinkle him to be king." So as before in the dress of ascetics they went to his door. Pleased he was when he saw them, and went up to them, and repeating the lines at last, and so forth, he did as the other had done. The others did as before, and told him the cause of their coming. He said, "Why is the white umbrella offered first to me, seeing I have a brother Prince Hathippala?" They answered, "Your brother has gone away, my son, to embrace the religious life. He would have nothing to do with royalty." "Where is he now?" asked the lad. "Sitting on the bank of the Ganges." "Dear ones," he said, "I care not for that which my brother has spewed out of his mouth. Fools and they who are scant of wisdom cannot renounce this sin, but I will renounce it." Then he declared the law to father and king in 2 stanzas which he recited. "Pleasures of sense are but morass and mire. The heart's delight brings death, and troubles sore. Who sink in these morasses come no nigher, in witless madness to the further shore. Here's one who once inflicted grief and pain. Now he is caught and no release is found. That he may never do such things again, I'll build impenetrable walls around. There you stand, and even as I speak with you, sickness, old age, and death are approaching nearer." With this admonition, and followed by a company of people a league long, he went to his brother Prince Hathippala, who declared the law to him, being poised in the air, and said, "Brother, there will be a great concourse to this place. Let us both stay here together." The other agreed to stay there. Next day king and chaplain went in the same manner to the house of Prince Gopala, and by him being greeted with the same gladness, they explained the cause of their coming. He like Asapala refused their offer. For a long time, said he, I have desired to embrace the religious life. Like a cow gone astray in the forest, I have been wandering about in search of this life. I have seen the path by which my brothers have gone, like the track of a lost cow, and by that same path I will go. Then he repeated a stanza. Like one who seeks a cow has lost her way, who all perplexed about the wood doth stray. So is my welfare lost. Then why hang back, King Esukari, to pursue the track? But, they replied, come with us for a day, son Gopalaka, for 2 or 3 days come with us. Make us happy and then you shall renounce the world. He said, O great king, never put off till the morrow what ought to be done today. If you want luck, take today by the forelock. Then he recited another stanza. Tomorrow, cries the fool. Next day, he cries, no freehold in the future, says the wise. The good within his reach he'll ne'er despise. Thus spake Gopala, declaring the law in the 2 stanzas, and added, there you stand, and even as I talk with you are approaching disease, old age, and death. Then, followed by a company of people a league in length, he made his way to his 2 brothers. And Hathipala poised in the air declared the law to him also. Next day, in the same manner king and chaplain repaired to the house of Prince Ajapala, who greeted them with joy as the others had done. They told the cause of their coming, and proposed to upraise the umbrella of royalty. The prince said, where are my brothers? They answered, your brothers will have nothing to do with the kingdom. They have renounced the white umbrella, and with a company that covers 3 leagues they are sitting upon the Ganges bank. I will not put upon my head that which my brothers have spewed out of their mouths, and so live, but I too will undertake the religious life. They said, my son, you are very young. Your welfare is our care. Grow older and you shall embrace the religious life. But the lad said, what is this you say? Surely death comes in youth as in age. No one has a mark in hand or foot to show whether he will die young or die old. I know not the time of my death, and therefore I will now renounce the world altogether. He then recited 2 stanzas. Oft have I seen a maiden young and fair, bright-eyed, intoxicate with life her share, of joy untasted yet, in youth's first spring. Death came and carried off the tender thing. So noble, handsome lads, well-made and young, round whose dark chins the beard in clusters clung. I leave the world and all its lusts to be a hermit. Go thou home and pardon me. Then he went on, there you stand, and even as I talk with you disease, old age, and death are approaching me. He saluted them both, and at the head of a league-long company he repaired to the Ganges bank. Hathipala poised in the air declared the law to him also, and sat down to wait for the great gathering which he expected. Next day the chaplain began to meditate as he sat upon his couch. My sons, thought he, have embraced the religious life, and now I am alone the withered stump of a man. I will follow the religious life also. Then he addressed this stanza to his wife. That which has branching boughs a tree they call. Disbranched it is a trunk, no tree at all. So is a sonless man, my high-born wife. 'Tis time for me to embrace the holy life. This said, he summoned the Brahmins before him. 60,000 of them came. Then he asked them what they meant to do. You are our teacher, they said. Well, quoth he, I shall seek out my son and embrace the religious life. They answered, hell is not hot for you alone, we will do likewise. He handed over his treasure, 80 crores, to his wife, and at the head of a league-long train of Brahmins departed to the place where his sons were. And unto this company as before Hathipala declared the law, poised on high in the air. Next day thought the wife to herself, my 4 sons have refused the white umbrella to follow the life of the religious. My husband has left his fortune of 80,000, and his position of royal chaplain to boot, and gone to join his sons. What am I to do all by myself? By the way my son has gone I will go also. And quoting an ancient saw she recited this stanza of aspiration. The rain months passed, the geese break net and snare, with a free flight like herons through the air. So by the path of husband and of son, I'll seek for knowledge as they too have done. Since this I knew, she said to herself. Why should I not renounce the world? With this purpose she summoned the Brahmin women and said to them, What do you mean to do with yourselves? They asked, What do you? As for me, I shall renounce the world. Then we will do the same. So leaving all her splendor, she went after her sons, taking with her a league-long company of women. To this company also Hatthi declared the law, sitting poised in the air. Next day the king asked, Where is my chaplain? My lord, they replied. The chaplain and his wife have left all their wealth behind, and have gone after their sons with a company that covers 2 or 3 leagues. Said the king, Masterless money comes to me, and sent to fetch it from the chaplain's house. The chief queen now wanted to know what the king was doing. He is fetching the treasure, she was told, from the chaplain's house. And where is the chaplain? She asked. Gone to be a religious, wife and all. Why, thought she. Here is the king fetching into his own house the dung and the spittle dropped by this Brahmin and his wife and his 4 sons. Infatuate fool. I will teach him by a parable. She got some dog's flesh and made a heap of it in the palace courtyard. Then she set a snare round it, leaving the way open straight upwards. The vultures seeing it from afar swooped down. But the wise among them noticed that a snare had been set around it, and feeling they were too heavy to rise up straight, they disgorged what they had eaten, and without being caught in the snare rose up and flew away. Others blind with folly devoured the vomit of the first, and being heavy could not get clear away but were caught in the snare. They brought one of the vultures to the queen, and she carried it to the king. See, O king, said she, there is a sight for us in the courtyard. Then opening a window, Look at those vultures, your majesty. Then she repeated 2 stanzas. The birds that ate and vomited in the air are flying free, but those which ate and kept it down are captured now by me. A Brahmin vomits out his lusts, and wilt thou eat the same? A man who eats of vomit, sire, deserves the deepest blame. At these words the king repented. The 3 states of existence seemed as blazing fires, and he said, This very day I must leave my kingdom and embrace the religious life. Full of grief, he lauded his queen in a stanza, like as a strong man lends a helping hand to weaker, sunk in mire or in quicksand. So, Queen Panca, thou hast saved me here, with verses sung so sweetly in mine ear. No sooner had he thus said, than on the instant he sent for his courtiers, eager to undertake the religious life, and said to them, And what will you do? They answered, What will you? He said, I will seek Hatthi and become a religious. Then, said they, we, my lord, will do the same. The king left his sovereignty over Benares, that great city, 12 leagues in extent, and said, Let who will upraise the white umbrella. Then, surrounded by his courtiers, at the head of a column 3 leagues in length, he went to the presence of the young man. To this body also Hatthi declared the law, sitting high in the air. The master repeated a stanza which told how the king renounced this world. Thus Esukari, mighty king, the lord of many lands, from king turned hermit, like an elephant that bursts his bands. Next day the people who were left in the city gathered before the palace door, and sent in word to the queen. They entered, and saluting the queen, stood on one side, repeating a stanza. It is the pleasure of our noble king to be a hermit, leaving everything. So in the king's place now we pray thee stand. Cherish the realm, protected by our hand. She listened to what the crowd said, and then repeated the remaining stanzas. It is the pleasure of the noble king to be a hermit, leaving everything. Now know that I will walk the world alone, renouncing lusts and pleasures every one. It is the pleasure of the noble king to be a hermit, leaving everything. Now know that I will walk the world alone, where'er they be, renouncing lusts each one. Time passes on, night after night goes by. Youth's beauties one by one must fade and die. Now know that I will walk the world alone, renouncing lusts and pleasures every one. Time passes on, night after night goes by. Youth's beauties one by one must fade and die. Now know that I will walk the world alone, where'er they be, renouncing lusts each one. Time passes on, night after night goes by. Youth's beauties one by one must fade and die. Now know that I will walk the world alone, each bond thrown off, nor passion's power I own. In these stanzas she declared the law to the great crowd. Then summoning the courtiers' wives said to them, "And what will you do?" "Madam," say they, "what will you?" "I will embrace the religious life." "Then so will we do." So the queen set open the doors of all the storehouses of gold in the palace, and she caused to be engraved on a golden plate. In such a place is a great treasure hidden. Anyone who chose might have it. This gold plate she fastened to a pillar upon the great dais, and sent the drum beating the proclamation about the city. Then leaving all her magnificence she departed from the city. Then was the whole city in a garboil. The cry was, "Our king and queen have left the city to join the religious. What are we to do now?" Thereupon the people all left their houses and all that was in them and went out, taking their sons by the hand. All the shops stood open, but no one so much as turned to look at them. The whole city was empty. And the queen with an attendant train of 3 leagues in length went to the same place as the others. To this company also Hatthi declared the law, poised in the air above them. And then with the whole train 12 leagues long he set out for Himalaya. All Kasi was in an uproar, crying how young Hatthi had emptied the city of Benares, 12 leagues in extent, and how with a huge company he is off to Himalaya to embrace the religious life. "Surely then," said they, "much more should we do it." In the end this company grew so that it covered 30 leagues, and he with this great company went to Himalaya. Sakka in his meditation perceived what was afoot. "Prince Hatthi," he thought, "has made the renunciation. There will be a great gathering of people and they must have a place to live in." He gave orders to Vipassanā, "Go, make a hermitage 36 leagues long and 15 broad, and gather in it all that is necessary for the religious." He obeyed, and made on the Ganges bank in a pleasant spot a hermitage of the required size, prepared in the leaf huts pallets strewn with twigs or strewn with leaves, made ready all things necessary for the religious. Each hut had its doors, each its promenade. There were separate places for night and day living. All was neatly worked over with whitewash. There were benches for rest. Here and there were flowering trees all laden with fragrant blooms of many colors. At the end of each promenade was a well for drawing water, and beside it a fruit tree, and each tree bore all manner of fruits. This was all done by divine power. When Vipassanā had finished the hermitage, and provided the leaf huts with all things needful, he inscribed in letters of vermilion upon a wall, "Whoso will embrace the religious life is welcome to these necessary things." Then by his supernatural power he banished from that place all hideous sounds, all hateful beasts and birds, all unhuman beings, and went back to his own place. Hatthi came upon this hermitage, Sakka's gift, by a footpath and saw the writing. Then he thought, "Sakka must have perceived that I have made the great renunciation." He opened a door and entered a hut, and taking those things which mark the ascetic he went out again, and along the promenade, walking up and down a few times. Then he admitted the rest of the company to the religious life, and went to inspect the hermitage. He set apart in the midst a habitation for women with young boys, one next it for the old women, the next for childless women. The other huts all round he allotted to men. Then a certain king, hearing that there was no king in Benares, went to see, and found the city adorned and decorated. Entering the royal palace, he saw the treasure lying in a heap. "What?" said he. "To renounce a city like this, and to become a religious so soon as the chance came, this is truly a noble thing." Asking the way of some drunken fellow, he went to find Hatthi. When Hatthi perceived he was come to the skirt of the forest, he went out to meet him, and poised in the air declared the law to his company. Then he led them to the hermitage, and received the whole band into the brotherhood. In the same manner 6 other kings joined them. These 7 kings renounced their wealth. The hermitage, 36 leagues in extent, was filling continually. When some great man had thoughts of lust or any such thing, he would declare the law to him and teach them the thought of the perfections and the ecstasy. These then generally developed the mystic trance, and 2/3 of them were born again in Brahma's world, while the third being divided into 3 parts, 1 part was born in Brahma's world, 1 in the 6 heavens of sense, 1 having performed a seer's mission was born in the world of men. Thus they enjoyed each of the three their own merit. Thus Hathipala's teaching saved all from hell, from animal birth, from the world of ghosts, and from being embodied as a titan. In this island of Ceylon, those who made the renunciation were Elder Dhammagutta, who made the earth to quake; Elder Fusadeva, a citizen of Katakandhakara; Elder Mahasamgarakata, from Uparamandala Kamala; Elder Malamahadeva; Elder Mahadeva, from Bagiri; Elder Mahasiva, from Vimantapabara; Elder Mahanaga, from Kalavalamandapa. Those in the company of Kudala, of Mugapaka, of Kilasudasoma, of Ayogharā the Wise, and last of all Hathipala. Therefore said the Blessed One, "Make haste, ye happy," etc. That is, happiness will come only if they use all speed. When he had ended this discourse, the Master said, "Thus, brethren, the Tathagata made the great renunciation long ago as now, which said he identified the birth. At that time, King Suddhodana was King Esukari, Mahamaya his queen, Kassapa the chaplain, Bhattacapalani his wife, Anuruddha was Ajapala, Moggallana was Gopala, Sariputta was Hathipala, the Buddha's followers were the rest, and I myself was Hathipala." Stories of the Buddha's Former Births. Book 15 Visit to Nibbida. 510. Ayogharā Jataka. Life once conceived, etc. This story the Master told about the Great Renunciation. Here again he said, "This is not the first time, brethren, that the Tathagata has made the Great Renunciation, for he did the same before." And he told them a story of the past. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta reigned in Benares, the queen consort conceived, and when her full time was come she brought forth a son just after dawn of day. Now in a former existence, another wife of the same husband had prayed that she might be able to devour the child of this woman. She, it is said, was barren, and being angry with mother and son uttered this prayer, for which cause she came into being as a goblin. The other became the king's consort, and brought forth this son. Well, the she-goblin found her chance, and putting on a horrific shape caught up the child from under the mother's eyes and made off. The queen screamed with a loud voice, "A goblin is carrying off my son." The other champed and mumbled him like an onion, and swallowed him down. Then after various transformations of her limbs, which annoyed and frightened the queen, departed. When the king heard, he was dumb. What could be done, thought he, against a goblin? Next time the queen was in childbed, he set a strong guard about her. She bore another son. The goblin again came and devoured him too and departed. The third time it was the great being conceived in her womb. The king gathered a number of people together and said, "Each son my queen has brought forth, a she-goblin comes and devours him. What is to be done?" Then someone said, "Goblins are afraid of a palm leaf. You should bind one such leaf on each of her hands and feet." Another said, "It is an iron house they fear. One should be made." The king was willing. He summoned all the smiths in his realm and bade them build him an iron house, and set overseers over them. Right in the town in a pleasant place they builded a house. Pillars it had and all the parts of a house, all made of nothing but iron. In 9 months there it stood finished, a great hall foursquare. It shone, lighted continually with lamps. When the king knew that she drew near her time, he had the iron house fitted up, and took her into it. She brought forth a son with the marks of goodness and luck upon him, and they gave him the name of Ayogharā Kamara, the prince of the iron house. The king gave him in charge to nurses, and placed a great guard about the place, while he with his queen made the circuit of the whole city rightwise, and then went up to his magnificent terrace. Meanwhile, the she-goblin wanting water to drink had been destroyed in trying to fetch some of the water of Vesavana. In the iron house the great being grew up and increased in wisdom, and there also he was educated in all the sciences. The king asked his courtiers, "What is my son's age?" They replied, "He is 16 years old, my lord. A hero mighty and strong, fit to master 1,000 goblins." The king determined to place the kingdom in his son's hands. He had the city decorated, and gave order that the lad be brought to him out of the iron house. The courtiers obeyed. All Benares was decorated, that great city of 12 leagues in extent. They decked out the state elephant in magnificent caparison, and dressed the boy in his best, and placed him upon the elephant's back, saying, My lord, make a circuit rightwise about the rejoicing city, your inheritance, and salute your father the king of Kasi. For this day you shall receive the white umbrella. The great being made his ceremonial circuit rightwise, and seeing the beautiful parks, the beautiful colors, lakes, plots of ground, all the beautiful houses and so forth, thought thus within himself. All this while my father has kept me close in prison. Never let me see the city so richly adorned. What fault can there be in me? He put this question to the courtiers. My lord, they said, there is no fault in you, but a she-goblin devoured your 2 brothers. Therefore your father made you live in an iron house, and the iron house has saved your life. These words made him think again. For 10 months I was in my mother's womb, as it might have been the hell of the iron cauldron or the hell of dung. And when I came forth from the womb, for 16 years I dwelt in this prison, never a chance of looking outside. Though I have escaped the hands of the goblin, I am neither free from old age nor death. What care I for royalty? Once established in the royal place, it is hard for one to get away. This very day will I ask my father's leave to embrace the religious life, and I will go to Himalaya and do so. Accordingly, after his procession about the city was over, he went to the king's palace and saluted the king and stood waiting. The king, seeing his bodily beauty, looked at his courtiers with strong love in his eyes. What do you wish us to do, sire? They asked. Take my son and put him on a pile of jewels. Sprinkle him from the 3 conchs. Uplift the white umbrella with its festoons of gold. But the great being saluted his father and said, Father, I want nothing to do with royalty. I wish to embrace the religious life, and I crave your leave to do so. Why would you leave your royalty, my son, and embrace the religious life? My lord, for 10 months I was in my mother's womb, as it were the hell of dung. Once born, for fear of a goblin I dwelt 16 years in a prison, with never a chance even of looking outside. I seemed as it were cast into the Asada hell. Now safe from the goblin, I am neither safe from old age nor death. For death no man can conquer. I am weary of existence. Until disease, old age, death comes upon me, I will follow the life of the religious, walking in righteousness. No kingdom for me. My lord, grant your permission. Then he declared the law to his father thus. Life once conceived within the womb, no sooner has begun, than on it goes continually, its course is never done. No warlike prowess nor no mighty strength can keep men from old age and death at length. All being plagued with birth and age I see, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. Great kings by force and violence subdue, hosts of 4 arms, terrific to the view. Over death's host they win no victory, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. Though horses, elephants, and cars and men surround them, some have yet got free again. But from the hands of death no man gets free, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. With horses, elephants, and cars and men, heroes destroy and crush again. But to crush death no man so strong I see, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. Mad elephants in rut with oozing skin trample whole towns and slay the men within. To trample death no one so strong I see, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. Archers who most strong-armed and skillful are, wound like a flash of lightning from afar. But to wound death no man so strong I see, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. Great lakes, their woods and rocks to ruin fall. After a while ruin shall come to all. In time all brought to nothing they shall be, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. Like as a tree upon a river brink, or as a drunkard sells his coat for drink. Such is the life of those who mortals be, so I'm resolved a holy life for me. The body's elements dissolve, they fall. Young, old, the middle-aged, men, women, all fall as the fruit falls from a shaken tree. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Man's prime is all unlike the queen whose reign rules o'er the stars. It ne'er will come again. For worn out eld what joy or love can be. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. While ghost and sprite and horrid goblin can When angry breathe their poison breath on man. 'Gainst death their poison breath no help can be. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. While ghost and sprite and horrid goblin can, when angry, be appeased by deed of man. Work it with death, no softening knows he. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Those who do crime and wrong and hurtful things, when known, are punished by the act of kings. But against death no punishment can be. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Those who do crime and wrong and hurtful things can find a way to stay the hand of kings. But how to stay death's hand no way can be. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Warriors or Brahmins, men of high estate, men of much wealth, the mighty and the great, King Death no pity has, no ruth has he. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Lions and tigers, panthers, seize their prey, and all devour it, struggle as it may. From fear of their devouring death is free. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Upon the stage a juggler with his sleight, performing can deceive the people's sight. To cousin death no trick so quick can be. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Serpents enraged will with envenomed bite attack at once and kill a man outright. For death no fear of poison bite can be. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Serpents enraged with venomed fangs may bite. The skillful leech can stay the poison's might. To cure death's bite no man so strong can be. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Physician's skill could cure the serpent's bite. Now they are dead themselves and out of sight. Boga, Veterani, Damantari. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Some who in spells and magic lore are wise can walk invisible to other eyes, yet not so invisible but death can see. So I'm resolved a holy life for me. Safe is the man who walks in righteousness. Religion well observed has power to bless. Happy the righteous man and never he, while he is righteous falls in misery. Is it not true his proper fruit from right or wrong shall spring? Right leads to heaven, unrighteousness a man to hell must bring. When the great being had thus declared the law in 24 stanzas, he said, O great king, keep your kingdom to yourself. I want none of it. Even as I am talking with you, disease, old age, and death draw nearer to me. Stay where you are. Then, as a mad elephant might burst his steel chains, as a young lion might break out of a golden cage, he burst his carnal desires, and saluting his parents, he departed. Then his father said, I want not the kingdom, and leaving it went with him. When he was gone, the queen and courtiers, Brahmins, householders, and everyone else who dwelt in the city, left their houses and went away. There was a great concourse. The crowd covered 12 leagues. With this crowd he set out for Himalaya. When Sakka perceived that he had departed, he sent Vipassanā to make a hermitage 12 leagues long and 7 wide, and bade him put within it all things requisite for the ascetic life. How the great being proceeded to admit these into the brotherhood, and admonish them, and how they became destined for Brahma's world, or entered upon the third path, all must be repeated again as before. This discourse ended, the master said, Thus, brethren, the Tathagata has made the great renunciation before, after which he identified the birth. At that time the king's parents were the mother and father, the Buddha's followers were their followers, and I was myself the wise Ayogharā. First seed, then embryo, then shapeless flesh, then something solid out of which soon grow thighs, hair on head and body with the nails. Whatever food or drink the mother takes, the baby lives on in his mother's womb.